Tonight is the regularly scheduled monthly work session of the North Penn Board of School Directors. We will be discussing a variety of topics that everyone should have a copy of, the agenda in front of them. Please make note, what we'll do during the action, or the normal work session is discuss a topic. The board will get a chance to answer questions, at which time I'll invite the audience to ask any questions they have at that time. Please try to be brief in asking your questions and limit your talk to 5 minutes. Please also be aware that we are videotaping this for play on community cable channel TV subsequent to the meeting. I'd like to also announce that we had originally intended to have an action meeting following this to discuss adoption of the preliminary budget and also the implementation of an earned income tax. We will not be doing that tonight, so if any of you are here specifically for that, please be advised. Our Director of Finance, Mr. Kelly's father, has been hospitalized, and he's with him. And also we've had a death in David White's father has passed away, so he's unable to be with us tonight. So unfortunately, due to those circumstances, we will not be having that action meeting, and we will reserve those items for the action meeting which follows on Thursday, next Thursday. One more thing before we start. We have Miss Sandy Rodman in the audience, a 5th grade teacher at Gwinnett Square, and she's been nominated for, she's one of the 5 finalists for Teacher of the Year. Sandy, can we have you stand up?
Why are we having an exodus?
Come up. We just want to wish you all good luck in the finals, and hopefully you'll pull it out. That's great.
I am incredibly honored and humbled, believe me, by this. Primarily because when I stopped thinking about all of the exemplary teachers in North Penn School District, and then you multiply that by all of the exemplary teachers across the state, it is truly a humbling experience. I have accepted the nomination in behalf of all of us here at North Penn, not only myself. Thank you very much for the recognition.
Thanks, Sam. Brown?
My son had Sandy last year in 5th grade, and
Let's kiss it up to the teachers.
she's worth it.
Great. Okay, we'll proceed on to the agenda. The first thing is the school-age child care brought to us by Bill Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. It has been my privilege to work with the members of the Child Care Review Committee, which was reconvened by Dr. Elko to review proposals and make a recommendation to this board. At this time, I would like to name the members of the committee. Jan Cook, Program Director of the North Penn Senior Center. Paul Cavanaugh, Director of Human Resources, North Penn Hospital. Jean Dilworth, Assistant Director of Community Housing. Charles Keffer, Director of Elementary Education, North Penn School District. Dr. Helen Larson, Principal, Nash Elementary School. Dr. Joseph Maglotti, Scientist at Merck. Dr. Thomas Sugar, Principal, North Wales Elementary School. Gail Tatum, Assistant Director of School Community Services. Mary Martha Whitworth, former Director of a Child Care Program. Arthur Wood, Director of Facilities, North Penn School District. I would like to thank all the members for the time which they committed to this process. I found all of them to be well informed and committed to the concept of school-age child care. The process was thorough, and I believe that the recommendation was based on thoughtful review. I would like now to introduce Jan Cook to begin the presentation. Jan?
Thank you, Bill. Dr. Elko, members of the school board, and my peers in the audience. I'd like to give you a little of information on the people who are in the task force, because they were a rather remarkable group, and because of their talents, you have a very fine recommendation. There are 4 educators, people who have had education, who have taught, who are administrators, who are knowledgeable in school development, education, curriculum, social needs, and how to structure and maintain a suitable environment for children. 3 of our task force members are in business administration. They're executives. They're accustomed to working with people, with budgets, with quality control, and each of those 3 also are totally committed to fine education and have other activities in the community dealing with children and education. The final 3 are representatives of our school district. They're trained with many years of experience. They're there safeguarding the school district guidelines. They look at both the budget issues and the legal issues, as well as the welfare of the children. So it's a very special group of people. The process that we used was primarily what we used the first time that we started setting up this very special program of care for children. We sent a proposal to all of those agencies that applied the first time around, and we put a notice in the newspaper. From that group, we received 2 proposals. The task force met. They discussed procedures, how we were to deal with this, and it was very clear immediately by comments from every single one of the people on that task force that they wanted to be very equal, very fair, and very open in looking at the 2 proposals that they had before them. And because both groups were very highly respected in the community. You know, it's sort of like being in a jury. When you're in a jury, you say, gee, if I were in court, I'd want them to be fair for me. And so you try very hard to be objective and to be very careful and to be very thorough and to look at facts. And that's exactly what the task force did. The task force members visited the various sites, those 11 sites in our school district and the 13 other sites in the Sodderton area that the other group covers. In fact, one of the task force members visited every single site. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to visit each site, so there was a very high level of commitment. The areas that we were to observe while we went through this process was to look at what was going on, look at the environment, see how appropriate it was for the children, and remember that the ages are quite wide. It's not a homogeneous group. They run from first grade through 5th and 6th grade. All sizes and shapes and levels of energy. We looked at the discipline. We looked at how involved the teachers were and what their level of expertise seemed to be. We spoke to the students, the kids who were there. We spoke to parents. We looked at the nutrition issues and the security issues. Then we all came back together and we discussed what we saw, how we felt about it, and we did this in a very careful procedure, looking at certain standards which we felt the school district had already set up and wanted to have continued. So we looked at programs, and we were looking for a program that was appropriately varied for age, interest, needs, ability, and were clearly designed for the after-school child. We looked at the coordination and the management. In other words, what kinds of skills were brought to the running of such a program. We looked at the security issues to make sure that all reasonable steps were being taken care of to ensure safety so that we could be confident that our children were being taken care of. We looked at fees. We wanted those affordable, competitive, and reasonable. We looked at the snacks. Were they nutritious? Were they available to the children when they needed them? Then we talked with the kids, which is a wonderful experience. You get very off-the-cuff kind of comments, and it is a very clear indication of how a child who is there after a long day at school feels about being there. We looked at the fees. I mentioned that. We also talked to parents as they came in to pick up their children. What did they think of it? What were they looking for? How satisfied were they? And we brought all of this back. Our conclusion was after the interviews and after looking at all these issues, was that there was really no reason to change the current provider, that there was every reason to continue with the current provider. Parents expressed a great deal of concern over changing one more thing in their children's lives and did not want changes because they were very happy with what they were living with. Our base program, as the board knows, is looked at as a model for other school districts. They come to us. How did you do it? What worked? So we're very proud of that. We have reason to be proud. We started off with around 300 youngsters. We now have over 575. I think that's a wonderful recommendation for this program. Thank you.
I'll just continue with a little bit more information. Jan's really given you a good overview of the process that we followed and what standards we used in order to make our decisions. What I want you to understand is that we're coming before you now with a recommendation to continue with the base program, and we are recommending a 3-year contract. I'd like to explain to you the reasons why we're recommending the enrichment workshop for children, and I'll go through the 7 areas briefly and describe why we see the strengths with the current provider. You need to understand that we had 10 individuals coming together, each of whom did their own research and came forward with their own opinions. And when we did come together ultimately, it was interesting to see that while it was clear we had 2 good proposals that were given to us and there were 2 good providers, there was a very easily reached consensus that it was better to stay with the current provider than to change at this time. If you look at the area of program, the members of the committee believe that the current program offers the best opportunity for North Penn children. It offers them flexibility. A child can go and read a book. They can go and play games. They can go and do a craft. They have all of this available to them in any given day. And so, depending on their school day and how it went, that child will be free to fit their own needs that day within a structure, but not have the whole day, the rest of the day, structured with a group, so that they have flexibility within an umbrella of structure. The group unanimously felt that that was the best needs for school-age children. The coordination of the program seemed very strong to us. The existing provider insists that the 11 sites follow the same lesson plans so that you can go to any site and see similar programs being done. There are themes that are provided. The qualifications of the teachers are strong, and the qualifications of the managers are strong. The director has a bachelor's in education, as do the 2 assistant directors, one of whom also has a master's in curriculum and instruction. We felt that the district was getting the best management from them. They had a clear sense of what they were doing, what the expectations were for their staff, and we felt that the high level of expectations were necessary for us to see in our schools. I know that many of you had concerns about the security issues, as we did. Probably this is something that any parent would feel is critical, maybe perhaps the most critical thing that they have to worry about when their children go to a child care provider after school. We felt that both providers had very good programs and clear evidence that they understood the need for this to be done as perfectly as possible. We felt that the current provider showed every evidence that they were taking every precaution that they could to ensure that children were getting where they needed to go at the end of the day. And we have every confidence that this will continue, and we would assure you that you should share that confidence. When we looked at the fees, we did several things. The fees that now exist for the current provider will be raised slightly next year. When we looked at comparative fees with other area providers, they still remain less than most providers in the North Penn area. The fees are very affordable, very competitive, and the comparison between the 2 providers was only a difference of $45 annually. We believe that the current provider has very affordable fees, well within the reach of most families. And they also offer the opportunity for families who are in need of assistance to get that assistance through the Department of Public Welfare. When we looked at the snacks that were offered, the current provider offers a choice through the whole afternoon or the whole morning. Children can come and get a drink with fruit juice in it. They can have vegetables, they can have fruits, they can have peanut butter and crackers. They are nutritious snacks. They're available to the kids all afternoon so that when they're hungry, they can help themselves. We think that is the best thing. And there's not any reason to have any concern about that. Finally, the parent response. The parents are overwhelmingly in favor of the existing program. Parent after parent after parent pleaded with us to keep the program, said they were happy with it. They had no concerns. Their children were happy. It was a wonderful thing. They thanked prior school boards for making the decision to offer this in our schools. We see absolutely no reason for the board to consider changing providers at this time. In fact, if anything, there may be compelling reasons not to change. Next year, we're going to be looking at lots of changes in our school districts. We're going to be moving grade 6 back to the elementary schools. We have a provider in child care who has done a wonderful job for us for 3 years. We've had almost no problems at all. We have every confidence that they are going to do a fine job, and we would urge you to consider renewing this contract, and we would urge you to consider a 3-year contract. I would say to you that I think that this process, while at times has been difficult and time-consuming, has proven one thing, and that is that we have every assurance now that we have a good provider. In reviewing this and in looking at what else was available, we should be more sure than ever that we have a good thing and we have every reason to keep it. I don't have anything else to say, but I'm happy to answer questions from any of you at this time.
Questions?
Any board questions? Carmen?
Gail, thank you, Dick. One of the concerns I had was about the security, and we had talked about making it the same as it is in North Penn, the calls and so on. Has that been incorporated within the contract that will be written for this if we do go with the base program?
We have not changed in the contract what would be required in security. We feel at this time parents must give 2 weeks' notice of their kid's schedule. We have a program where if a child does not show up at base, that they are contacted. They do have a phone number. They can contact the parents. You need to get a perspective on how well this program is handling kids. If you were to look, we have an enrollment of about 575 kids. We have 100 who come every day before and after school. It's 181 days for these 100 kids alone, before and after school. That's 362 times a year days a year that they have to come together. The opportunities that there are for mistakes is over 36,000 for those 100 kids alone. Last year there were 3 incidents.
But the fact that those incidents occurred, and the fact that the security that is instituted is not the same type of security that we institute. I don't see any reason why we can't go through the same security that we institute so that we've got the same level playing field on those two.
But we do have the same security. The children are signed in by parents. I mean, in many ways it's more elaborate than what we have. Children must sign their children in the morning. We don't require that. Then they are taken to they're assigned to their classrooms. At the end of the day, they're checked in by the faculty, and they're signed out by parents at the end of the day. That's really more than we do.
And I think Mrs. Leahy is just suggesting that since they do it anyway, just state that in the paragraph. It should not be a burden to the provider if it's in the contract, so just put it in as a paragraph in the contract.
I think we have to understand also that part of security is that child does in fact show up at base. It's not the base providers or the child care provider's responsibility to go to every classroom and collect the children. They kind of sit there and wait for the children to show up, and then when they're not there, they go into their procedures. So there is some responsibility between parents, children, schools, and the provider to make sure that the children get to the program. Sometimes children leave early. Parents take them home, forget to sign them out, which has happened. Nobody knows where the child is, and here the parent has them at home. But there is a responsibility on everybody's part. What we have to make sure is that we know that we are comfortable with the procedure once the child does not show up at the after or before school. Basically, it's after school. That we are comfortable with what the procedure is after the child does not show. We can't make the child get there.
Well, you have a couple of points, though. One of the points is, in our school district, people cannot take their children out without signing them out. I
No,
mean,
they
that is
can't,
something
but-
they can't.
But they do.
But,
They do.
No.
Trust me. I've
well,
seen it.
then North Penn has
It
a
happens.
problem. But if a child is taken out and that child was originally, if the child went home sick or whatever, and that child was originally to be at the base program that afternoon, then we can easily get that information to them. That's the first thing. The second thing is you're saying that the base people are not responsible. They wait for the children to come to them. So the burden of responsibility has to lie within the teacher or someone else who's responsible. There can be a type of building person who could be responsible for the children and check them off the list so you don't lose them along the way. The fourth thing that was mentioned, and it's something that we in the school district definitely have, is that no child is allowed to be picked up by anybody but someone who, you know, is signed to do that. And there was a comment, whether it happened or not, there was a comment that people were not being checked, children were being picked up, I recognize this person, I can go home with this person. That type of security, to me as a parent, certainly is something that I would insist on, because there's a lot of problems with you know, dysfunctional families or differences of families. So that institution within our North Penn School District security should be also included so that they have the same type of security also. You know, there are several points, and it's nothing extra, and it certainly covers the school district, and it also parallels the school district. And I think, you know, it's worked for us. There's no reason why they can't work under those guidelines also.
Any other questions?
Yes, I do. Bill, I have a few questions. Gail, first of all, Gail and Jean, thank you very much for your
Done.
report. I can't hear myself either. Is this plugged in? Gail, did I understand this correctly? As I've gone through both proposals, the YMCA did in fact underbid EWC
There was a difference of $45 a year between the two, that is true.
on a full-timer?
On a full-timer before, and $45 annually difference, yes.
Okay, and there was a even greater difference if it was a part-timer? Did I read that right?
It was 35 cents, it would be 35
Per
cents a
session.
day from before, or 35
So,
cents
so on the
after.
annual, we're comparing annuals here, so
Yeah,
on the
annual
annual,
is
you're looking at what?
$45 annually is the difference.
Full-timer?
Yes.
And
Before
part-timer?
after every day, yes.
Okay. As I read through both the proposals, I was interested in the fact that the YMCA, aside from underbidding EWC, also provided other elements along with their bid. They had solutions for snow days. They had a summer program, which, to their credit, we have students 9 months a year, and they would have been a provider that could have provided that summer segment for, you know, for parents without having to look for a summer provider when the school year lets out, which I thought was great. I also was happy to see the scholarship program for needy and indigent students, not the welfare grants available through DPW that I'm aware of. Those are tax-supported monies. These are actual scholarships provided at the expense, not of the taxpayer, but at the expense of the YMCA. And so I thought these were really nice elements, aside from a general membership to the Y itself came with each kid that enrolled in the program. But aside from that membership, was there any willingness on the part of EWC to, since you're recommending them and they are not the lowest bidder, to match the YMCA's legitimate proposal?
Okay. Do you mean match in terms of the things that you just listed?
Yes, snow days, summer program, follow-through summer program, there's 3-9 months, a scholarship program that is not contingent on tax dollars, and matching the fee that the YMCA came in with.
I have not asked them to match the proposal. I know that we have been approached by them before about offering a summer program. That is something that they would have an interest in, if we would have an interest in doing that with them. The general membership is not really a general membership. You need to clarify that that is not a general membership to the Y. That was a $25 fee that allowed them to take a course, only one course, and it registered them as a member of the Y, so it boosted the Y membership. I'm not sure how that's comparable or how we would trade that off.
That's what I'm
In
saying,
terms-
you couldn't on that.
You
That's why
certainly
I
can't.
pushed that off the side. I'm
The,
talking these other ones.
The snow days, Mrs. Shaw does not have the facilities to hold the number of people that the YMCA could do. They have always been very eager to have us open our schools earlier so that they could accommodate more parents. And as you know, we do open at 10 o'clock on snow days in order to accommodate that. I'm sure I could ask her if she wanted to match the difference of $45 a year, which is what we're talking about. I have not done that.
Okay, I think that's
I
something
would
worth
say
looking
that
into.
in other ways, the programs, in terms of those specifics that you mentioned, the trade-offs would be very even at this time.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that I would see.
If I could help answer that question.
Sure.
As I interviewed the parents, and you saw how many I interviewed, if you read my report, the fee was never a concern to anybody. I had more offers from parents to pay more to keep the program than people that would just say they were satisfied. It said, it's not the money. If I have to pay more to keep it, I'll be glad to keep it. Asking someone to reduce their costs in a program that we believe to be better, I don't think is fair to the person who has the higher cost. I personally believe that we get something for that higher cost, and I could put it in one word: snacks. The amount of money spent on snacks and food compared to the two programs. There's more than $45 worth
Well-
of difference in the programs, and the current provider would have every right to reduce the snacks to the level of what we saw at other places and still be within the terms of the contract. And
Well,
I would rather, if I were the parent, I would rather see the fresh fruits and the vegetables and the good food.
Well, then, if I understood the WISE proposal, they were going to purchase snacks from the school district itself, were they not? Weren't they going
No.
to purchase them from us?
Not necessarily. We only asked them to confer with the food services department, which is
Okay.
what we asked of the current provider.
Okay.
But no,
Okay.
they did not agree to that.
Okay, very good.
Did they disagree?
No, they didn't disagree, but it wasn't anything that they
Wasn't
offered.
The other, it's not a question as much as a point and something to be taken into consideration regardless what happens with this proposal tonight, and that is as somebody with adjoining property lines with a elementary school with a EWC daycare site. Often I see the base children playing, as they should be after school, like most children do, but they'll be in a certain area being watched by their care providers. And other children from the neighborhood, especially North Wales, where it's a walk-in school, it's a community school the way it is, there's all these other children running over there. And say base is watching 20 kids, and these are their 20 charges of responsibility, and there's 25 other North Walesians that have gone home for the day but come over and play. They're running in among these kids like this. And I think if I was a care provider, first of all, I'm not there to watch anybody else's children other than those I've been charged to do so. And secondly, keeping a track when you've got this mixing. I think there's some merit in possibly separating these children. I don't know how fair it is or how right it is or how even legal it is, but for, a part of the security and safety concerns that we all share collectively as a board and as parents, there's something the matter with that, and I think there has to be a division. I think it would help the care providers.
That's something we have to address, though.
That's correct.
Not asking any provider. Am
But I'm
I
sure you
correct
brought-
in your...
Donna, you brought up one thing about the legality, that property belongs to the whole
Correct.
community. So if you're getting into, well, this part is going to be to the base, then you'd have to rent it or do something of that nature. And I'm not sure that legal-wise we can restrict a playground that belongs to the community.
Well, that's why I
to
brought
only
it
our
up, that it's
kids.
something to be considered, that if
No,
the
security
provider
is
has to watch
important.
the 20, it's easier to do it if the 20 were somehow set apart from all the others running in amongst those children. So it's something to look at. There's probably other board members that wish to speak. I'll just hold it this time. Thank you, Gail and
I have
Jan.
a question. Gail or Bill, was there any consideration given to just a one-year contract instead of the 3 years? Since
It's-
it does appear, all the correspondence that I've read and all that I've heard, snacks comes up as a biggie, and also structure comes up as a biggie. The Y is too structured, base is structured just right. If the Y could come up could appease in those two areas, because again, those areas come up quite a bit, would that bring the Y more in line with what base offers? I know, and I heard you very clearly, Gail, that base has very qualified staff, and I truly believe that. However, I have a very hard time, and I would say at this point, I don't know that I could support a 3-year contract, especially from all the correspondence that I've read, that it's so close.
Let me answer that from one point of view, from a business point of view. If you're going to start a new product or something, you have startup costs, you have trial times. We have had that with the current provider, 3 years of annual reviews that we could have changed providers. That person put a lot of effort and money into starting a program. We now have 3 years track record. I don't see any harm in staying with something for 3 years that we know about already. We do it with lots of different things. We still have the right to cancel if they don't follow the guidelines. You also have to remember that if any provider doesn't do the job right, the people and the parents are not going to send their children. We have to keep in mind that this is driven and influenced by the parents that use the program. This is not something that is done for North Penn School District. It is done for the parents. The parents like it. There's growth. There's many families that have been there for 2 and 3 years. To be changing every year, to be subjecting somebody to this time-consuming, gut-wrenching thing we've been going through for the last 2 months, I don't know the benefit to anybody unless it's to just keep churning over providers. I don't know what the advantage is to North Penn School District. I don't know the advantage to the parents that use the program, and I don't know the advantage to the children that are in the program. We can always cancel if they don't perform. We're not stuck with anybody for 3 years. If the program doesn't work, the parents will let us know, and then we can address it.
I just bring that up because from the correspondence, it seems so close. And I wouldn't, at this point, I don't have any problem. From everything I read, that the base program is a very well-run program. I don't have any problem in okaying it for a year. I do have a problem with the 3. The point's well taken, but I still have a problem with the 3-year contract.
I have to support Mr. Clemens in that I too feel a 1-year contract would be most appropriate. I would hate to see a disruption in this year as we look at other disruptions to be anticipated in the following year. But I do want to say something that has soured me a bit, and have to be quite honest about it. We've heard many comments, good comments on behalf of both parties, probably more in favor of EWC, but then again they have a pool of clientele of which they can make, can send in comments. I have received letters into my home. I've received letters through the school district here. But one piece of correspondence here that has me most disturbed was written by an attorney out of Philadelphia whose name I will not disclose, but I will leave this letter with Board Secretary Ken Weir. It was written to a taxpayer in our community who from time to time has complained about EWC. Be those complaints legitimate or not, that taxpayer has every right in a public meeting to come up to this podium here and put on the public record not only their questions but their complaints, and as we all know, because every one of us has been a victim, allegations, be they true or untrue. What surprised me is that EWC took it upon themselves to have their attorney send that taxpayer a letter threatening litigation if they did so again. I would hate to think that this is how any subcontractor of ours would handle a complainant. Be they legitimate or be they off the wall or whatever anybody thinks, they have a right to complain, and we have all been victims of complaints up here, believe me. I guess what bothers me is this last note here. I advise you to be extremely careful about voicing your opinions unless you are certain of the validity of them. If you cross the line again, my client's actions will be swift and sure. I resent this. I resent any of our subcontractors taking this letter of this nature to one of our tax-paying members of a 90,000 person community. Whether this is legit or not, the board, I will share this letter with my colleagues, but in the future, if there are complaints, our citizens need to voice them as they see fit, without any fear of litigation to their personal property or themselves. Be they service providers such as this, be they our attorney, be they our accountant, our engineers, or anybody else who works for us and we have provided them with a contract. I do support EWC being here for one more year, and that we come back again in a year and go through the bid process again.
On the other hand,
I would
Mrs.
like-
Mangle, just a
Go
second.
ahead.
If in fact, because Mrs. Shaw and the Educational Children's Workshop, or whatever it's called, is a private business, if there are complaints that must be raised, they must be raised to us and they must be substantiated. If they can't be, then in fact, because she is a private business, they are hurting her business by unsubstantiated comments, and she has every legal right to take the necessary courses of action. So in that regard, if they're blatant lies, then she must take action to protect herself as a businesswoman. And I see no problem with that in that regard. If they're substantiated, they need to come before the administration here and the board to rectify those problems if they can be. And if not, then we take other action as she sees fit.
Well, I know that our attorney, our engineers, our auditors, our bond counsel, our administrators, our board members, I know a lot of us folks take hits on a regular basis, and I don't know of any of us ever threatening litigation in such a heavy-handed manner, and I would just wish it would not happen again. And
Are you suggesting that she take libelous statements lying down only because she works for this school district?
Well,
Or as a
I-
provider? I don't think that's right.
The question
It's a
would be,
private,
if we sat here,
go ahead, Ralph, I'll stop.
were they of a factual nature or of an opinion?
How about if we cool this,
But I
because
have some
it's getting
questions.
nasty, and.
No,
weigh
it's
in.
not. No, it's not. It's it's very
We're just
professional, and
discussing.
I'm impressed with what my colleagues all have to say, and I appreciate the report given. And it has convinced me to see EWC stay for another year.
Can I ask a few questions? Yeah, the $16 fee that would be in the contract, would that be standing for the full 3 years of the contract? There is no provision in the specs for an escalation of that cost.
The specs would not, you would not see that in the specs, you would see that in the contract. If you wish to have a provision that there would be a review of the fee every year, that could happen, and that has happened in prior contracts. So that could be a provision of the contract at the request of the board.
Okay, now you've talked about provisions for snow days as far as the schools opening earlier, and I get the feeling you're talking about late start days, but what about the days, you do hear the inconvenience that parents have when they have to be at work and schools close down for the day?
That has been, that is true. We do not open our schools. When school is closed, base is closed, and that has been done at the request of the district. The provider would very much like to have access to one or two of the schools and be able to offer childcare on site here, but we have not determined that we would do that because it's very difficult to access the schools and to make that possible, so we've not made that a provision.
Yeah, we'd be
Vic?
finding ourselves with overtime for the clearing of those particular schools on the schedule.
Vicki,
However,
I want to address that when you're done, I'm sorry.
okay.
Could I add something to that point, please? Regarding the snow days and such. I would like to reiterate that Mrs. Shaw has been consistent in requesting that there be facilities in the summer, that there be facilities on snow days, and that there be facilities early in the morning on snow days. It is the school district who has been unable. She made the point, but I wanted to reinforce that point, that we have taken the responsibility because we feel our liability responsibility is such that we must have the sidewalks cleared, the parking lots open, and we would be happy if we could admit people before 10, but that is our choice. I'm sure that Mrs. Shaw or the YMCA or any provider would like a more complete program because parents want this
Parents
help
really do
every
want it.
day.
That's right.
Not just on certain days.
Well,
all
I
parents,
understood
too.
that, and I was gonna make my understanding of that clear regarding the facilities to clear out and having to perhaps have that task on the burden of arts people to get those schools cleared, which part is one of the reasons why we're closing, because of that burden. But was the Y offering off-site snow days? As I understood, they were.
The Y said that they had a capacity of 175 students who at the Y site, so parents would have to bring the children to the Y, and the Y is also the facility that would be used for some of the Souderton children as well. But they do have a capacity of 175 that they could accommodate on a snow day.
Vicki,
Okay,
if I can just answer that a little further. In my discussions with parents, when I was at the sites, there seemed to be overwhelming concern about the late start days. Almost nobody complained about when they knew school was closed. Everybody seemed to think that was easy for them to handle. It's not the closed days, it's the late start day that is inconvenient for them.
What happens often on snow days, the high school kids and junior high kids are also out of school, so babysitting is available for families. So it does make it a little bit easier when
Well, I'm just
school is
trying to
completely
figure out
closed.
Our pluses and minuses here, because of 35 cents a day for a part-timer, now that would be any child who's not in there both before and after?
That's right.
If they're there every morning,
Both agencies provided fees so that if you had a child that came in the morning, you paid a certain fee.
even if they came every day,
Yes.
but just in morning, well,
Yes.
that would be a $63 a year difference. I know, as we talk on a yearly basis, these numbers seem small, but a $45 difference is the equivalent of the average household's eight mil tax hike. 8.5 actually, and the 63, of course, goes even further, so we could talk, maybe our,
I don't think I understand your point.
well, as far as what a $45 difference would mean to someone, I mean,
$45 a year.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's still the equivalent of 8 mils of average household real estate taxes at $8 a mil. So I'm,
I don't think so.
I'm sorry, the
$45
part-time, the 63.
What does that have to do with price?
The part-time savings is higher than full-time.
And I just had some questions that, my concerns didn't have to do with the memo, as a matter of fact, or that letter that Donna was referencing, but it was regarding the specs and exactly if we do have an understanding of the food that the Y would supply, because as I brought to your attention, Bill, my concern was when phrases in a formal request for a proposal read that the provider must work with the North Penn School District Food Services Department to arrange for breakfast, snack, and other food services. I said, well, how do we know what they interpret that to mean?
That's right.
One provider may interpret that to mean that they would be purchasing through the district and therefore assess a fee, a cost in their fees, while another, such as Mrs. Shaw, may realize that that's just doing whatever she's been doing, which is providing her own.
One of the difficulties when you write a request for proposal is not to spoon feed those that you're giving this to. You need to give them some guidelines, but you need to see what it is that they would do under those guidelines. When we did this before and used this request for proposal, we received 8 proposals and we used the same language for snacks. Most of those providers interpreted that to be healthy snacks that involve fruit and vegetables and drink with 10% fruit juice. The YMCA was not clear about that point, and when we visited their sites in Souderton, their snacks, in fact, were what we considered not adequate. One day the snack was popcorn, one day the snack was pretzels, and so on. We did not see nutritious foods, and so we did not have a sense that they had interpreted this proposal to our satisfaction.
However, we don't know that whether they were intending that
Well,
to
it would
mean
be our
that we would be
expectation.
purchasing, or what it would be.
It would be our expectation that they would see the need for nutritious snacks.
Well, I spoke to Bill almost 6 weeks ago, and it did deal with the request for proposal, and it did deal with what I felt were nebulous statements in it that left things so open. When Bill gets a proposal for a request for a proposal and a bid on a door, I think it's a lot easier for him if he not only gets the dimensions, but if he's also told whether they want aluminum, steel, or wood. I mean, it's a much harder task to try to zero in on what the people are looking for if you've got very broad specs in that sense. I told Bill at that time that I had a little difficulty with support supporting not necessarily Mrs. Shaw per se, but the process itself, and I won't go into the specifics of the flaws that I had very serious concerns over. However, again, I will say that we left it very vague as to what the actual enrollment was at the school for the Y, and that did concern me because we have one operator who has a clear breakdown and something very sturdy to rely upon in estimating. Of course, they still have to juggle with the numbers as for the new enrollment, but the specs themselves really didn't provide that, just the general population that attends the Y at this time.
Vicki, we asked,
Not by building, and
we did ask the Y to revise their proposal based on the same numbers as the current provider. We gave them that second chance.
did they have building by building breakdown, Bill, of the current enrollment?
They had a formula which was better than that because it provided them with the projected enrollment and the percentage of a percentage figure that gave them the breakdown of full-time and part-time.
But I
So
mean,
it
they-
adequately gave them the figures that they needed in order to give us good budget
But they
breakdown.
wouldn't know how close the numbers were running to the 12-to-1 ratio between school buildings. In other words, if you've got 17 and you're looking at that and figuring what your margin is before you have to take on another staff member.
If they asked, we
coming
would
in
have
on
told
that.
them. We can't give them every piece of information. They weren't denied any information.
But
They
Mrs.
asked.
Shaw had that in her package, so that's certainly a
I don't know
benefit.
what Mrs. Shaw used. I'm just saying, if
Okay.
they had asked, we would have told them.
Okay, well,
I think on this subject, in fairness to all, it should be said that we're changing attendance boundaries.
yes, there'll be
We're
change,
opening 2
yeah.
additional schools. That will have impact on enrollment. And we're bringing all the 6th graders back to the elementary school. So there will be significant changes, I would expect, in enrollment for any provider, given the changes that the school district's seeing. The count at the moment will be very, very different next year, I'm sure. And that would be true for any provider. Equally difficult for both.
I
to
appreciate
project.
all the work they did. I just think it's unfortunate we only really had a field of 2 here. I believe every member on this committee did previously serve in the original committee,
Except for Bill.
except for Bill, yes. And I believe both the Y and Mrs. Shaw competed
Submitted
with the
last time.
same committee the first time. And basically, this would be a reevaluation of the committee on how well they chose first time out. And apparently, they are supporting their original recommendation. I just do wish that there had been a little bit more activity on this, and I felt perhaps the vagueness of the specs may have created a lower response from all the various daycare providers that we do have there. And there have been some concerns, and there have been some events that took place that disturbed me a little bit.
Any other questions?
Ralph?
Ralph?
As this thing developed, I sat down and read carefully the 2 proposals. I sat and talked to people at Wissahickon and Solderton who were using the WISE proposal, and I talked to some people that were using ours. And I have never in my business life seen the level of customer satisfaction and customer loyalty that I saw with Mrs. Shaw's program. And picking up on what Donna and Tom Clemens have said earlier, I think it would be foolish, given the price difference, for us to go away from Mrs. Shaw. But I guess the only concern I have about the proposal that we've got here, both of them are, by the way, the WISE program and Mrs. Shaw's, as I read the program, are excellent programs. And the people I talked to in Solderton and Wissahickon and some of the others are satisfied. But the only problem I have, Mrs. Shaw's customer loyalty, I have not seen that ever in business. She's obviously doing something special there. And I think it would be inappropriate for us, given the price difference between the 2, to take it away from Mrs. Shaw. I guess my concern is, when we look at, when Mrs. Shaw got the contract, it was a 1-year contract. It had a right to bid forward, a right of first refusal. We chose to, as a board, extend that 2 times. And now, as we go into the fourth year, we decided to open it up for bids again. And if I understand it right, it's been our practice to have a yearly contract. And I would support what Donna and Tom were saying. I think that given that that's what the proposal was, I agree that we should go with Mrs. Shaw. I think that we ought to make a one-year contract. I understand that the right of first refusal is gone out of this one, and that a board in a year will have to decide whether to extend it or rebid it.
Yeah, it doesn't
But I would,
necessarily mean
I
that
would
we'll go
agree.
out, but we would.
Yes, a board
we
in a year from
maintain
now,
that.
just like the last 2 years, would have to decide to extend it or rebid it, but that we should have it a year contract, because I think that's what the understanding was when it was bid. And
It provides us
that I think that,
quality.
I agree that Mrs. Shaw's done a fantastic job, and I would not vote to take it away from her. But I think that a 1 year with the understanding that in a year, we're gonna extend it and adjust price or rebid it, and that's something that we'll decide in a year.
Is it clear that the right of first refusal, that legal language will be taken out of the
Yes.
contract and it will never show up again?
Yes.
That's good. I like the idea of the yearly. I don't think there's anything more business healthy than the competitive bid. And the more we have service providers bidding against themselves in a community of competitors, it will keep them healthy and it'll keep us above reproach.
In view of what you said, Donna, I understand what you're saying about competitiveness, but we're offering, first of all, we're not offering. We're allowing somebody to provide a service. Unless we can put real criteria on what makes one better than the other, it's a hard time to get, quote, competitive. I don't know how you can put in black and white and non-judgmental things what is better than the other. I just keep that in mind. I don't think it should just go to low bidder. I don't think that's what this service is.
Well, I think if I
Okay.
felt that way completely, I would be recommending we go with the YMCA,
Well.
because not only did they underbid EWC, they also provided some extras here that sweetened the pie, in my opinion. But recognizing that that's not the
Okay.
end-all,
Good.
my compromise here is we go yearly and let the competitive process work, but not to the tune of 3 years.
The one had very strong credentials on the teaching staff, I do know that. I think structured versus unstructured is really what you're all looking for. I mean, structured actually takes more time and planning on the part of the provider
Actually,
than a lower structured
doesn't.
umbrella.
actually, that's not true.
Well,
I think it's much easier to have all 30 kids do the same thing than it is to watch groups of kids doing several different things and to supervise them. I think it's much more difficult to allow choice within structure than to have everybody doing the same thing at the same time.
I guess I just have the visions of the ceiling tiles falling down in the gym and
I
some
would
other
suggest you go
things that
and watch the
we're
programs,
concerned.
especially after school when the kids are wired. The morning, they're kind of lethargic. Go after
I
school
think
and
we
watch
will be able
how
to
these
use-
40 and 50
yeah.
kids at the big schools are so well controlled, maintained, all over the place in little groups, and how when their parents come, they don't want to go home. For me, that says it a lot.
I think that whatever we're doing, we make a strong message to the community that we're not, there isn't a threat or a movement on any part of this board to eliminate the base program, which I consider ours. The before and after school care name is really.
It's hers, it is not ours.
Okay, well
It's
then,
hers.
but
We
the
all- it's a
program
generic
that's
name
there,
now, I know.
the service of having it before and after and through the district isn't in question. And a lot of people can get very desperate if they're thinking that you're going to eliminate the convenience of this daycare.
I want to weigh in here just for a minute. Now, I think I've heard from at least 4 or 5 board members that are favoring a 1-year extension only or awarding of the contract. Understanding that we'll need to do this again next year
Started earlier.
if we're going to do this process. And there's a potential for more than 2 providers to bid.
Correct.
Now, understand the scenario that could happen in that we could have people like the Y and Mrs. Shaw who already have programs existing, and some other daycare providers that do not have programs on this level. How do we evaluate them, and what will be our criteria for doing that, understanding that? a recommendation perhaps is that we go with a one-year contract with renewable one-year options for a year or two, so that we could, at the request of the board or at the request of the provider, choose to not exercise that option and rebid.
But the one-year contract doesn't force us. We've had one-year contracts that have been renewed without us having to take any, we weren't forced into bidding, is what I'm saying, just by having the one-year.
If you have an option in place, then by default, you will
A
continue
self-renewing
on with
contract?
no, it's an option on the contract that has to be exercised. But technically, if Mrs. Shaw is on, she could say at the end of June or at the beginning of September, I no longer want to do this because I don't have a valid contract.
You better tell us before then.
No, she doesn't have to.
But we're gonna have
Well, you
it
would
on our
put it in your
agenda. We're saying we're
contract.
not gonna
My
remember it, or-
point is that what is your vehicle for renewing the contract after the year is up?
What have you done?
And right now, we have to go through that consciously at some point in time prior to the bid and proposal process to make sure that happens. If not, then we get behind the power curve and there's not enough time to do it. And then what happens if she's not an adequate provider and we want to find someone else? So therefore, we have to think about
Start
this, I
earlier.
think, a little bit more than just saying 1 year only. And I think we have to protect ourselves as a school district and have an option in there that we can exercise at our request, or that if she is not going to choose to exercise the option, notify us by a certain day, certain time, as well as us. If we don't choose to continue on for the next year to exercise the option, at which time we will go out for an RFP. I suggest that day be 1st of February or something to that effect, so that she knows and we know where we're headed. And we have to do that early enough, or we don't get down to the 11th hour and try to make a decision and have to go out and look at 10 people who have submitted bids to run our base program.
If, you know, we've been either renewing or bidding for the first 3 years. There is an issue, I think, that's legitimate about continuity of the program. And if there is some sort of an option that both sides have a way out of, and we have a timeline on, I don't have a problem with that. So that if we're dissatisfied, we can get out. If she's unable, she can get out. That would provide the ability to get continuity, i.e. a renewal, or allow us or her the ability to say, no, we're gonna rebid, not necessarily throw her out, but rebid. I don't have a problem with that, because that provides continuity and us the ability to get out, which is different than the right of first refusal that we have now.
Exactly.
And also, it does not require us to go through this months of time that we've all put in this year, if we wish not to. If we wish
That's
to.
exactly my point.
Okay.
And it could be compounded, unbeknownst to us, by a point in time when we put out the RFPs and get back 10 proposals, in which you have to go through exactly what you've just gone for 2 people 5 more times. And I know how much time Bill put in, and I'm sure, I know the committee put an equal or more amount of time in on that. You know, for something where we're getting very, very good service, I'm not sure we want to do that, or put ourselves in that position. That's why I'm looking to protect not only the district, so that we have continuity of program, should we choose that, so that we don't have to do that or get too far behind the power curve and not be able to do it. So I would suggest or recommend that we go with a 1-year contract with renewable options with a certain date that we can, that we put in there, that both parties have to notify of their intent by a certain point.
Sounds good to me. I like the continuity if we wish. Terry?
The only thing that I would like to add is in addition to what Carmen said about the security, I would like to see specific rigid security check-in and check-out requirements where either they're signing in or they're showing a driver's license or whatever, but where they know exactly when that child arrived or left and who they left with. That's critical to me.
I think we've talked about the contract right now. I'm not sure, there's 2 issues, whether we're going to continue with the program we have. And if we are going to continue with the program we have, what are we going to write within that contract? And there's been, it sounds like a consensus for a yearly contract with a stipulation that at a certain date, either we back out, they back out, we continue, or we rebid. That's one. The other part, and I'm not sure if we have a consensus of this, but at least Terry and I both feel that the security issue is a major issue, and that should be also part of the contract. Now, if everyone else agrees with that, I think,
Carmen, I
we'd also
told
need to
Bill
put that also.
about that, and he, I told him where I saw concern, there was a gap between the teacher not really knowing which kids are scheduled for base. And basically, it was relying on their memory. In other words, you've got these first graders being asked, okay, who goes to base today? Well, if it's been a hectic morning, I mean,
And we've
we all
stated,
remember our appointments and which way we're going.
and we have stated that we want some tighter
And-
controls there. So
and
I think it leaves us to vote on whether we want the base program to continue, that provider, and if that provider, whichever provider the board decides on, we would like a one-year contract, and we would also like the security measures, and before we vote on that. So I would imagine for Thursday, we're voting on whether to accept Mrs. Shaw or whether accept the YMCA.
Now, I saw that as mechanical, that we have to work out.
That's
with the
for us,
district.
that's not the
Right.
contract.
That's what
That
I
happens
understand.
after we,
Getting a
Right.
list, it
Right.
really isn't.
But the way the schedule is, I mean, for Thursday's agenda, what were you planning on putting on there?
We're gonna put a recommendation for Mrs. Shaw's business to provide a one-year contract and a one-year service. And we will write into that contract the renewable one-year option. And we can also work with Mr. Potash to write in the security procedures that are currently in place.
Okay.
that I see as mechanical.
It would be our intent to have a contract prepared, which the board would see in sufficient time prior to the meeting. We would expect to be able to mail you the draft of the contract. I don't foresee any problems in meeting that deadline and that schedule. I believe that the conversation that we had earlier today and what we've heard tonight will make that possible. So we would draft a contract for you to see over the weekend or early in the week at the latest.
Could we agree that the review date would be in the formal meeting in January? If it's a September to June contract, could it be understood that our decision would be made in January?
February, probably.
It's too close
More
to the
reasonable.
beginning of the year,
Fine.
school year.
Fine.
I think January would be better,
do
actually,
too.
because
And that way, one-
the earlier
January's
the
better.
better, and it allows,
Yeah.
if there is a decision to go out to review again, we need as much time as possible to get
Absolutely.
that done in a timely fashion.
We'll put it in for board review at the January committee meeting.
Great. Any other board questions on this before I open it up to the audience? Great. Are there members of the audience that wish to speak on the base program? Ma'am? June?
June Yalkowski, Benson Township. I'd like to comment on, and in some cases correct, some statements that were made by Ms. Cook, Ms. Tatum, and Mr. Allen tonight. Mr. Allen was not on the board when the original contract was entered into with Base, and after that contract was signed, Mrs. Shaw proceeded to obtain $80,000 in federal grants, $10,000 for each of the 8 original schools where the program was offered for startup cost. In my opinion, that probably carried the program through at least a good few months, and certainly would have paid for any equipment she needed, which I believe were things like games and storage carts and things like that. The original contract required Mrs. Shaw to purchase food at a very reasonable figure of cost plus 10% from the school district. Mrs. Shaw chose to ignore that without it ever coming before the board for vote after that time, instead choosing to do it herself and provide snacks herself. I'm very concerned, given the increased pest problem in this district, about women who are not district employees, not cafeteria workers, being allowed into our kitchen to prepare snacks, possibly leave boxes and things around that might attract pests. I also have to point out that Mrs. Cook said there were 3 district employees on the committee. There were indeed 5. And most of these committee members were the same people who originally gave the contract to Mrs. Shaw. At that time, I did much checking myself, and only 4 of the original committee members, and to the best of my knowledge, because I spoke to virtually all of them, no board members visited Mrs. Shaw's Green Street site before that contract was given. I did, and I was not happy about some things that I saw. Now, everybody has different standards of how they live and cleanliness and how they think children should be raised. I was not happy. That's my personal opinion. Mrs. Shaw told me at that time that she would like to have sandboxes in the schools as she did at Green Street. And I was very concerned when I saw the sandbox at Green Street about sand getting into the children's food, because the room with the sandbox was right next to their kitchen. In her initial proposal, one of the activities she had suggested was the children playing a hairdresser game, working on each other's hair. The first thought that came to my mind was a lice infestation that could result. And I was very concerned at that time that someone with what seemed to me a very small concern for basic hygiene would be given this contract. Since then, there has been the incident at the North Wales School, which has me very, very concerned. Once our staff leaves the building, the administration has told me that we really have no way of knowing if the required number of workers are there, if the children are indeed all together in one room or wandering around the building. In regards to the North Wales incident, I was told we might never know if there was a daycare worker in the gym when the children were hanging the tiles on the ceiling, or if the children were alone in the gym. That terrifies me. Certainly this is a problem with any provider, but I have a lot more confidence in the YMCA than I do in Mrs. Shaw. I'm also concerned that there have been documented in the newspapers at least 3 incidences where children who should have gone to base instead wound up going home. And certainly we have been very, very lucky that none of those 3 have come to any harm or accidents by not being at base when they should have been. I'm very concerned about the security with the present system and the fact that there does not seem to be much check, the fact that the list of children as far as what days they will attend base goes not to the district but to Mrs. Shaw's Green Street location, and it is then up to her to notify the schools if she does so, and so the teachers know which children go where. If a mistake is made in that process, then it's easy for children to wind up in the wrong place. And I don't think we should be relying on first graders to know if it's Tuesday I should be at base and if it's Wednesday I should be going home. I'm very, very concerned about what seems to me a very lax method. And one of the things that I think is lax is the fact that we have an unstructured program. Certainly it's cheaper and easier to let children do what they want than to put them in groups according to age and have a structured program. A structured program requires better teachers. It requires much more cost than just letting the children do whatever they want. There have been scattered incidents with this program of vandalism. And again, it makes me wonder where the daycare workers are. And since they're preparing their own snacks, I also have to wonder how many of them are in the kitchen working on the snacks or cleaning up after the snacks, and how many are with the children, and if it's because they're in the kitchen that these incidents have occurred. I'm also concerned that we're not going with the low bidder, particularly a low bidder that's offering a number of very nice extras. And contrary to what Mr. Allen thinks, or may be the case in his home, it's often very, very difficult for parents to find babysitters on snow days. There were not one, but several articles in the Inquirer this winter about the problems parents had either having to take their children to work with them or losing work days themselves because of the numerous snow days this winter. And I think the wise ability to accommodate those children is a very strong point. I was very concerned from the first year of the contract about the right of first refusal being in there, particularly with what was then a new provider who ran one very small facility on Green Street in Lansdale. I remain concerned with that was in the contract for the 2 additional years, and I see no reason why we have to have any provision or option at this time. Certainly, Mrs. Schau, from all indications, would be happy to continue. If she doesn't want to continue, it's her option, as it would be any other businesses. And I see no reason why we have to tie ourselves up to this provider in light of the fact that there might be other people who want to come forward. I would welcome 7 or 8 other providers coming forward and possibly coming up with a better program than either of these two, and at possibly much lower cost. I was very concerned this year that when we sent it out for bid, that we gave the bidders only 11 business days, or 11 days counting 2 Saturdays and 2 Sundays, 7 business days to come up with those bids, and it was only advertised once in the newspaper and was done so quietly that I had to wonder how many possible providers even knew that the bids had gone out. And I was very concerned that the bids were not done by our purchasing department or by our solicitor, and instead were done by 2 people in our public relations area, and that our administration took it upon themselves to set the fee at $16.
Thank you, Mrs. Yurkowski. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the board? Yes, ma'am?
My name's Diane Bishop. I have a son, David, who's 10 years old, who's been with the program since the beginning. David is so happy with the program that he gets up extra early in the morning to make me coffee so that he can get there even earlier because he knows I don't go without it. BASE has gotten better every single year that he's been in it. I have 2 older children who are capable of taking care of David after school, that are home most of the time, but I would prefer to have him at BASE. It's not cheap for me. I was a single parent for many, many years, but I would gladly skimp on anything else rather than the care of my child. That is the ultimate concern of any of the parents that have their children in BASE. I have felt very confident with the teachers. They often know my child better than their own teachers, because they are with them in a social situation. And a social situation is just as important as the learning situation because they learn from social interaction. And they get much more social interaction at BASE. They're at their school, there's the gym there's so many things, and I like the fact that they can go outside. I am a firm believer in this program. I've been on both sides of the bidding process in my own job, and I can tell you that once I find a good vendor, I stick with them, because then I know I can count on them, rather than go and try something new all the time. I've also been on the side where I've had to bid for jobs, and people, it's not a good thing to do. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's a healthy situation. I would be more in favor of a 3-year contract, because once you have something good, especially when it concerns our children, then that's what you should stay with. I also, I feel that they are very concerned, very interested people that are taking care of my child. As far as the snow days go, I've had to make other arrangements, sure. But, you talk to other parents, you figure it out. I'm not a stupid parent, and I think give us a little more credit. We don't have to rely on Nancy Shaw for everything concerning our children. But I am delighted that she's taking care of them that her staff is taking care of my child after school.
Thanks, Ms. Bishop. Anyone else? Ma'am, in front here. Yeah, absolutely.
My name's Pam Burke. I'm from Lansdale. My son has also attended the BASE program for the 3 years, before and after school, every day, since it began. And since I'm a full-time working mother, this is a very important program for me, and it's been a godsend, believe me, since its inception. Also, my son has attention deficit disorder, and because of his hyperactivity and his impulsiveness, he does not cope well with large group situations. We were very apprehensive to submit him to another group situation such as BASE after after he had to deal with school atmosphere all day long, where there's large groups all over the place. And I wanted to tell you that I have nothing but high praise for the current BASE program. Not only has our son done well, but the teachers and staff have been very supportive and extremely understanding of his weaknesses and his strengths. And I can't help but worry what situation we would find if the current BASE situation was not continued. I only wish the program had been around when my 14-year-old daughter was in elementary school. And I'd also like to address some concerns about security. The sign-in and sign-out process is very well attended. The teachers are always there making sure that everyone signs in and signs out. Also, my husband works in New Jersey and very, very rarely picks up my son from the BASE program. There was a relatively new teacher at one point. He came to pick up my son. She asked to see his driver's license, even though my son ran to him and said, "Daddy." She asked to see some ID. She had a discussion with him. Also, my 14-year-old daughter went one time. She asked who she was, what she was doing there, and I found that to be extremely careful about security. So I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Fair. Lady in the green.
My name is Margot Sclafani. This is my daughter Tara, and she too attends BASE. I brought her tonight, even though she won't speak. She wrote some notes back there, and I thought they were probably better than anything I could have said. But I'm going to say what I have to say anyway. And I really wish she'd say what she feels, because it was wonderful. She thinks very highly of this program, as do I. I just passed a significant birthday, and my short-term memory is failing me, so I want to address a few things that aren't on my notes before I forget. To the woman who came up originally and spoke, I have to agree with her. You can't rely on first graders to say if they need to be there on a Monday or a Tuesday. You should rely on the parents. I'd like to think I'm diligent about sending in notes and saying when Tara will ride the bus or not ride the bus, but I'm not always 100%. I'm working on it, and I think it's a parent's responsibility. I think BASE's responsibility begins and ends when they receive the child. The parents, I think, have to be responsible for the security of their children, and I can't honestly say that all the parents I've seen have been. I, too, have seen them check licenses of people and was quite impressed. In fact, one young fellow who's there at our program apologized to me when he saw me looking, and I said, I'd be upset if you didn't check that man's license. And the person he checked had no problem with it either. So the security, this is my child, this is my daughter. She's the most precious thing in my life to me. I had the Y program, and I wasn't going to get into it tonight. I was just going to say if you wanted to hear my horror story, you could see me later. But since this seems to be the main topic, I will address it. We were in the Wissahickon School District, and they not only lost my daughter, they knowingly and willingly allowed her to go off with the janitor. When I got there to pick her up and found her missing and asked where she was, I got a shrug of the shoulder and was told she's with the janitor. Now, she was 6 years old. She thought this was pretty cool to go off and clean rooms. She won't clean her own, but she wanted to clean all the classrooms. They made no attempt to get up and come with me to help find her. I was so extremely upset, as any parent in this room can imagine. It's your nightmare come true. It was horrible. I had also seen and discussed with them the shortage of staff versus children, and they shrugged their shoulders and said to me, you should be lucky that we have anybody here at all. We're so understaffed. I watched them sit on the bleachers and read a book while the children amused themselves and discuss that with them. So I'm here to passionately plead for the continuance of BASE and dispassionately plead for the opposition of the Y. For that matter, I'm opposed to any other program. They've done a wonderful job. It's very difficult to keep track of 570 children, and I think all things considered, they've done remarkably well. I have all these wonderful notes that I wrote, and the only other thing I can really think of is that these children, I feel, need some continuity in their lives. They've been disrupted by the redistricting. Now they're being asked to handle yet another change. I think this is too much. I think because they've done a tremendous job, all things considered, and realized that perhaps they failed in some areas and worked to improve those areas, that they should be allowed to continue. I'm not getting into the 1-year, 3-year contract. I don't feel I have any expertise in that area. I'll leave it to you. But I do feel that they've done a remarkable job, and they should be allowed to continue and improve upon the job they've already done. I think they've shown every parent here, and I have to agree with Mr. Allen, the overwhelming response was incredible. The consumer aspect of it. I'm in the consumer division as well in our marketing department. And you don't see that. You're absolutely right. And it was a wonderful tribute to this whole staff. And I sincerely hope that you'll take all of this, especially the children. We're not here tonight for ourselves. We're here for these kids. And to give them something that's made them happy. Kara, would you like to say anything? No. Basically what she wrote is, it's not fair to the children at the BASE program. BASE has been here since 1990. I think children don't like to be away from things that they adopt. If I go home on the bus and my mom's not home, I know that's not safe. But if I start to go in the bus line at school, I can't go. BASE makes sure you are at BASE when the kid is supposed to be. I don't think it's fair to the parents either that they have to go to work and they need a trusting child care. When the parents are at work, they feel comfortable that their child is safe at BASE. Thank you and good night.
Thanks, Tara.
We wish.
Okay, anyone else? Man, sir in the back.
My name is Jim Major. I'm from Lansdale, Upper Gwinnett Township, really, actually. I have one child now that's attending Gwinnett Elementary, and I've had 2 children going through the BASE program since its inception. I just, as a father, and we've heard many mothers here tonight, as a father, working every day, I think, to me, it's an absolute blessing to have my child in a program like this. I feel very comfortable with the way BASE has treated both my children when they're in the program. When I go in, which is not quite often, my wife is usually picks the children up, but when I go in, they're always playing, they're always having a great time. Sometimes it's tough to get my son out of the baseball game until at least the inning is over when they're playing. I think what Nancy Shaw has done is over the last 3 years, as far as the program itself and providing the service to the children and also to us parents is astronomical. I think it's a great program. I don't feel that the school board should make any change whatsoever as far as choosing the YMCA because it's not a proven program. I think the BASE program itself, after its 3 years, has proven itself as a very viable program, not only for the students, but also for the parents. The parents can rely on this program. And there's been a lot of issues concerning security. Now, I've gone there many a times, the times in which I've gone there, in which my wife has gone there, to pick up my son. It's always sign in, it's always sign out. And I've had a couple instances where my sister, who is signed up as the emergency person to pick up my children, when she goes in there, she has to show identification, and she also has to sign out. I personally, we've never had a problem with the security issue. And the other thing that I do want to say is that, as far as the dollar amounts, if the dollar amounts have to increase in order to have my children stay there, and they have increased over the last 3 years, and if they have to increase again, I would be glad to pay it because I really feel comfortable with the program and I feel comfortable with the teachers and how it is being provided. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Major. Right there.
My My name is Carol Davis from Tomlinson Township, and as the co-author of the original needs assessment survey, I have somewhat of a vested interest in this topic. I was one of the few who was privy to read the verbatims on the needs assessment surveys that were sent out several years ago, and they were very heartfelt. I could really sense the need in the district, and I was so very pleased that the district did respond by providing this opportunity for parents who are working to have a place for their children to go before and after school. I guess my question basically is, why change something that doesn't need to be changed? The BASE program has been very successful. I've always heard wonderful remarks, oftentimes unsolicited. I was teaching in the district for a semester, and one day at lunch I overheard a conversation that I wasn't even part of, where one of the teachers was leaving her son at BASE in the morning, and he liked it so much that he was begging to stay in the afternoon. Comments like that, again, very unsolicited, are things that really prove to us that this is a successful program. For those people who are concerned about the insignificant difference of $45 in the program, think about one Saturday night out at a restaurant and you're going to spend more than that. I'd like to leave you with a comment that Judge Lisa Rochette made at a women's legislative conference that I attended some years ago. And her point was well taken. She said, "How much do you pay the little boy who comes and mows your lawn? And how much do you pay your babysitter?" You know, the idea was, let's get our priorities straight here. Our kids are important. I think we're very lucky in this district to have the BASE program. And my recommendation would be to continue it and to consider, again, the 3-year contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Does Mrs. Shaw do lawns? Just kidding. Anyone else in the back? Someone's hand in the back there? Stand up. Okay.
Dick.
Come on up.
Dick on the other side.
No, we have a hand in the back there, I saw.
He's had his hand up for 3 people now.
It was a tree.
Okay, in the middle?
I don't think you can see it, but the camera.
I saw a hand. Where's the hand coming?
Tell him Bob Collins to call him.
There's a child there. There's a child there. There's a child.
I'd rather he talk.
The kids speak so you won't go to bed.
I'm Charlie Williams from Upper Gwinnett Township. My daughter Veronica goes to Gwinnett Square Elementary School, and she got to start out at the first year when it opened, and along with the BASE program there. So she started out with 2 new things, and they both worked out perfectly for us. We're very, very pleased with the way the whole operation went. The people who work there have continued to evolve and have developed as a fine group of instructors and controllers of our children, and have done an awful lot of things that have been excellent to the children, in my opinion. They've got a lot of games, as we've already talked about. They've also had art projects, which my daughter brings home quite a few of, and I have to say that a lot of them are very well thought out and imaginative. And a couple other things they've done is had a play, at least one per year, where they actually programmed and choreographed among themselves. The children were brought together and set up a play and put it on in front of the parents, and we had a great time. We had comedians come up, and we had dancing and singing and those kind of things. It was a great thing for them to do. One of the things that does for them is develop a social grace and the ability to stand up in front of people and perform, or to at least communicate. I mean, I think that's an excellent thing to have for children to develop. They've also, at least in Gwinnett Square, put on a once-a-week dance club in the morning where they get together, and I think it's Miss Betsy that does that, but she and my daughter and the rest of the kids get together and they dance, and that helps them wake up in the morning, if nothing else. I know they're a lot lethargic. I've seen my daughter try to get going in the mornings. Have to fire more than one spark plug under her. They get to go out and play outside, which I think is excellent. I'm not so sure that the intermixing is all that bad, except from maybe the liability point of view, because they're able to interact with all those kids who show up too. At Gwinnett Square, they don't have so much of that, and I'm sure I might want to look at that a little bit further if I were up in North Wales, where there's more community interaction. As far as the snow days and delays, I'm not so sure that's all bad, because I don't mind a break once in a while to get to be with my kid in the morning and go outside and knock around in the snow a little bit. And on top of that, the idea of driving to an area, driving up to the YMCA building away from the school that I go to every day seems to me a pretty dumb idea in icy conditions like we've had in this past winter. I'm exposing myself and my daughter to much higher risk by doing that. I may go off to work, but I'd rather not have my daughter when I drive those 10 miles to work. And driving up into an area that I'm not real happy or don't know real well in traffic conditions which are marginal at best, I'm not sure that's so good. If it were at the school itself, I might consider that as a valuable asset, but for school days and school delays, driving through those conditions to somewhere I'm not familiar with is not a good idea in my point of view. I think the board should probably consider the idea of an annual review of the contract, but I think that the people who run the enrichment workshop and the base program should have some kind of a basis to a solid foundation which to base their planning over time, and shouldn't be expected to come and try to plead their case every year over and over again. All that does is make them act a little bit like our elected officials in Congress, where they're out. You know, the congressmen all have to run out every 2 years and try to get reelected again. They start on their reelection before they even finish the last one. And I'm not so sure that's good for us.
Thank you.
And I think that's about as a good idea as any, is to maybe allow the option for the school district to review to see what kind of complaints have come up. And even in the case of the one that Ms. Mengel brought up, maybe they should summons the person who made the complaint in the first place and find out what's going on with that, not to allow some kind of a statement that came in from some unreliable source to sway everybody's thoughts on it.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
I hope that I've been able to add a little light to this, and I surely hope that you keep the base program as it is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't think there's any question among board members that we've chosen at least to keep it for a year. So if anyone wants to comment on that, there's no need. Sir? No. Mr. Kearns?
I actually had two issues to address tonight, and it was unfortunate.
Name and address, sir.
Bob Kearns, I'm sorry, Upper Gwinnett Township. The one issue was dealing with the earned income tax, and I understand your finance committee is not going to discuss that.
Sir, as you understand, we're only talking about the base program right now, so please confine your remarks to that.
I understand it, but I would like to address that for 1 second, because we do have a comment.
Sorry, sir, we don't
Will
do
there
that
be a
at this
time?
meeting.
Will there be a time this evening to discuss that then?
Yes.
Okay,
Later on.
then I'll hold it to that, thank you. I have a very simple plea to make concerning this, and that is on behalf of David Honorado, who cannot be here this evening, who's the president of the Y Board. David unfortunately had to be at a Tolmanson Township Supervisors meeting this evening, so he could not be here to address this issue himself. The plea simply is that the Y would like to make a presentation itself to the board concerning this issue. I heard a lot of discussion and comments this evening, and I think it would be appropriate in order to gain additional information to allow the Y to do that. That's my comment concerning the issue at hand, but as I indicated, I would like to comment further on the earned income tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Peggy Melanson. I have 2 children in the base program. We've been with the program since its beginning. And I will say in short that I'm very pleased. You've heard a lot of testimony tonight. I would comment just on 2 things. You have gathered a lot of consumer research in your visits to these sites. I would wonder why the board would choose to ignore that consumer research. The second piece I'd like to comment on is that the Y is a generalist, whereas the Enrichment Workshop for Children is a specialist in child care. And I don't know that there's any parent in this school district who would not pay more for a specialist over a generalist. In regard to Ms. Mengel's concerns about snow days, I'm a full-time working mother who cannot afford to miss 15 days out of my year. I utilized the base snow day program. 8 out of those 15 days and would have utilized it 15 out of 15 had I not taken some days off simply because I couldn't maneuver the roads, or my husband took some days off for that very same reason. I don't think that's a concern. I never had a difficult time getting 2 children into a snow day program at the Green Street base. In regard to the summer program that Ms. Mangle brought up, Base does have a summer day camp program. I have not taken advantage of that, but I know it does exist and it is an option for parents of school-age children. In regard to the question that was brought up regarding structured program versus unstructured program, having 2 children in this program for 3 years, I would like to comment that an unstructured program is far better for these children after they have spent 6 to 8 hours in a structured program in school. The concerns that were stated here tonight are valid. They all come from different perspectives. I would once again return to the consumer research that has been conducted and use that. If you've got 100% customer satisfaction, there's no reason in the world why that should be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Claire Tobias, and I'm from Upper Gwinnett Township, and my son Michael has attended base for the past 3 years. My daughter will be attending base in the fall. She's going to be in first grade in the fall. I've been very pleased with base and the program that Nancy Shaw has provided. I agree with what Carol Davis said. Why change something that doesn't really need to be changed? And that's basically all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tobias. Anyone else on base?
Me.
Dr. Alco?
Yes. Towmenson Township, thank you. I would just like to thank the members of the Child Care Committee and our board representative for all of the hours and the hard work that you've done through this process. There's been a lot said about Mrs. Shaw's program, and I think it has validated the success of the program, but I want to acknowledge Gail Tatum, because Gail is the administrator responsible in our district to bird dog the program, listen to parental complaints from parents here in our school district, work with Mrs. Shaw, and I think she does an absolutely fantastic job. She deserves a lot of the credit, I think, why the program is a fine one and why people are up here talking about this fine program. So thank you, Gail.
Since many of the people that are in the audience tonight came specifically for this discussion, we'll take a 2-minute recess to allow the audience to change.
Yeah, that was nice. Thank you, Dick.
Changing of the guard.
2 minutes. Last item on the agenda is the Penndale renovation schedule. Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. I would just like to take this opportunity, first of all, when we talk about C-colored phasing plan, to help clarify the colors. When you try to duplicate highlighted colors, it's not the easiest thing to do on a color copier. In fact, only the Canon copier will come close to it. So as you look at your copy, you need to understand that down in the right-hand corner, second floor annex, first floor annex, that is, in fact, orange. Band room auditorium is yellow.
Hold on, your class isn't ready yet.
All right. And understanding that in case you folks are looking for colored copies out there, you don't have them.
Yeah, they do.
Do
I?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Where am I?
They're not in the packet.
They're being distributed.
When did it to be? Where's
They're
my?
distributed.
They're the ones you got sent, Carmen, not the one from tonight.
Oh, I didn't get it.
As we begin talking about the renovation, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Dick Wolfcastle,
Thank you, yes.
the architect that has been working so diligently on this process. And we would together like to take you through our scheduling or our phasing, talk a little bit about our bidding, and then I have also shared with you an 11 by 17 plot plan, and we will talk a little bit about the changes that we will be making to the site, to the actual site of Pendale Junior High School. Just to give you a little bit of history, and many of you know, some of you may have been educated in the old Lansdale High School. That building was built in 1932. We have a 50 edition of the vocational ed area, or the vocational area, and of course the major renovation was done in 1955. In an attempt, and I will quickly jump to the graphic that I have behind me, in an attempt to walk you through what will happen to the exterior of the building, you need to understand, and those of you that are familiar with the building know that we have red brick, and we have beige brick, and we have brown brick, and we have stucco, and we have many kinds of material. In order to deal with that, we will, and I can best give you an example, we will be wrapping the building, if you will, in a material called Drive-It, which is a plaster type material. The best example that I share with my colleagues and our staff at the junior high is when you go down and look at the Lost in 50s building, the new credit building for Merck. That is a Drive-It system, as is Walton Fuel. It is it's a new type, not that new, but relatively new type of plaster that allows you to introduce colors. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this other than to show you that Mr. Warmcastle kind of picked up on the Art Deco theory or theme that we have in the original Lansdale High School building, and he's carrying that through on the entire junior high school. We now have approximately 950 windows. We will be reducing that to somewhere about someplace around 500 windows. Although we're reducing the solar gain, we are increasing the number of movable sash, and that will allow better ventilation in the building. With reducing solar gain, we should have a greater comfort level. We will also be picking up an R factor on the exterior of the building, which will help with our comfort level. The windows that we are using, you can see the color, it's a burgundy color. They will have the mini blind sandwich between the thermal glass. From a maintenance standpoint, that works very, very well. It's not something that you have to clean each summer. It's not something that you have to maintain or is available or open for vandalism. The only change in the entire footprint of the building, and when I get to the plot plan, you see here, as you now enter the bus circle, and by the way, the bus circle will become a pedestrian courtyard only. We're going to eliminate that situation we have where buses are going in and coming out and commingling with young people. We will have an elevator here, and you can see the elevator shaft, and for those of you that are familiar with the building, we are adding a second level bridge. And if you have traversed the building, when classes change, you will recognize to get from what we refer to as the annex to the original, or to the 55 building, we now have one bridge to do that with. We will be adding a second bridge, so we're going to increase our traffic flow, number one, and number two, it eliminates the need for two elevators. One elevator can serve the entire building. So that gives you an idea as to what the exterior will look like. As we talk about our interior renovation, if you look at your floor plan, and as we open up for questions to Mr. Warmcastle, quickly going over the floor plan, you can see it is our intent to begin working in the annex, and since the board made the decision to reduce enrollment to 925 ninth grade youngsters, we will be able to have big chunks of the building for the contract. We will start with the orange part, which is not necessarily orange or more salmon on your copy, but that is the second and first floor annex. That will be turned over to the contractor in September of '94, and they will have that through December of '94, whereby we will not be commingling students with workers. That area will be available for the contract. We are changing, as the board is aware, and I will share with the community, we're changing many of our mechanical systems. This renovation involves new plumbing, new sanitary sewer, converting an existing steam heating system to hot water. We're just going to do a major renovation as it relates to mechanical systems. The inside of our classrooms, if you recall, when the administration moved to this building, we did 10 classrooms, and that is pretty much the style of what we will be doing with the classroom. If you walk our corridor now, doors swing open right into the corridor, and it's not very difficult to get smacked in the face with a door. They will be offset, the way we offset them in the administrative area. We will have new tack boards, new chalkboards, not chalkboards, new marker boards, ceilings, lighting, new energy efficient lighting. The windows, of course, will be changed, new unit ventilators along the wall with bookcases. If we look at our entire schedule, you will see as we go down through the schedule, the brown, which is rooms 2 through 12, plus a faculty room and a choral room, as well as 47 through 54, would be a phase that would begin in mid-December and continue through the end of January. Moving on to mid-level, item number 3, the blue, and you're looking at those rooms that surround the 2 courtyards. You will see that that schedule is provided for the month of February. As you move down to the yellow areas, which happens to be the auditorium, or excuse me, the auditorium and the band room, we're not going to be starting the auditorium until May 1, so that our youngsters can use the auditorium through this school year. We will have our last activity in there at the end of April. Anything that would normally be scheduled for May will be moved to another location. But we will need May through August to complete the auditorium, the band room, and the area that you see there. Whereas classroom area, 31 through 45, will be worked on through from March through mid-April of '95. When you look at the green, which is pretty much the gym, the large gym, the lockers, the gym, small gym as we refer to the gym 2, and the lobby area outside of the gym, that is scheduled to begin in May of '95, and we would hope, or we know that that will be ready for the opening of school in September. And that is locker room restoration, restoration of the gym, where we'll be refinishing the floor and doing the other things that we have to do to make that gym a contemporary gym. If you look at the pink, which shows purple on your drawing, or not true, a true pink, and that would be room 17, which is a home ec room, the instructional materials center, the guidance suite, the main office, the cafeteria, the kitchen, and the ground level area where plant operations is now located. It is our intent to do that work next summer when they're unoccupied. It will be convenient as far as the office area is concerned, and it will also give us an opportunity to do the kitchen and the cafeteria with students not in the building. As we look from September '95 through October, and we know there's that possibility, distinct possibility, that we will go back to 1,300 students in a 7-8-9 configuration, and we would be looking to finish up all of our punch list items and any area that is still requiring some work. The boiler room will be involved at that point in renovation, and our need, since the building is not a climate-controlled or air-conditioned building, we will have until the heating season, and if we begin that in September of '94, we would have a comfort level whereby the work in there would be finished by November. I guess I'll just jump into the other drawing, and then we'll field your questions. As you look at our plot plan, it's probably best to reference that with the block, the title block at the bottom, because under the, right above the word site plan, would be the parking lot at ESC. That's the parking lot at this building. So if you follow up through Church Street, and I guess one of the things we're looking to do first is, and will be before the borough, next Tuesday night. We have been to the borough on a number of occasions, and we're working through our plan, and we do need to have a variance as it relates to our setback on Church Street. But let's go to the front of the building first and look at what we would like to accomplish this coming summer so that it would be ready for the opening of school. Now, that sounds a little bit scary as to where we are now, but if you recall, we did the very same thing at Penfield. We didn't begin that work until July and did have it open for the opening of school. But you will see, if you're looking down toward the alley, where we now have existing parking, that parking lot will be modified to contain some planting and an island in the center. And then our new driveway would come in, and the reason that the driveway curves the way that it curves is that we worked very hard to retain some of the wonderful trees that we have in front of that building. If you're familiar with a nice large pin oak in front of the Odeon and a number of other pin oaks, and with this design, we can have those trees remain. One of the things that we would be doing, there would be an 8-foot wide sidewalk toward the building, which would allow our buses to stack. As we're stacking now, we're stacking the bus circle very tightly. We're stacking Penn Street, unfortunately, and we're stacking the upper bus circle. This will take our buses off of Penn Street, and we see that as being a very positive move. Our drop-off in the morning, where we're coming in piggybacking, would be up in front of the building at the main entrance. We would have a driveway, you can see right beyond the word bus. They are handicapped parking spaces that would allow you to park there and be on the same level to go right to the elevator for the use of handicapped facilities and to be in total compliance with ADA. As you leave the parking lot up at the top toward Church Road, you know now that you can come through there and past that canopy. That would be eliminated. We will be removing the tennis courts and the basketball courts, and we will be coming with a driveway off of Church Road that will give us a distinct parent drop-off. One of the commitments that the board has made, and we have been doing it in all of our locations with new construction, Montgomery, Gwinnett Square, Bridle Path, Walton Farm, and Penfield, is to attempt to separate parent drop-off with student drop-off or buses, so that you're not commingling buses with parent drop-off. And you can see that that works quite well. There will be some more additional handicap parking spaces up there. The thing that we worked very hard to do, the memorial grove of trees, our flowering crab apples, the 14 trees remain. 2 of those, by the way, are on the other side of the bus driveway as you're going down toward Line Street. Staff parking changes because of the need to put some islands and put some green in there, add some trees and some planting. At a later date, if you look at other off-site improvements, we would come back and work on the parking lot the following summer. We need to put a stormwater detention area down next to the alley, if you will, down behind the existing track and football field. At this moment, we do not have a stormwater detention area, and what that will do is just delay water as we put it into the borough's stormwater system at the alley and Penn Street. And that basically is where we are. We would certainly entertain questions Dick has included, and we can just look at it quickly. Our bidding schedule, as I pointed out in the green sheet that I shared with you, it is our intent to pre-purchase. The idea of pre-purchasing on long lead items, if you will, electrical switchgear, boilers, air handling equipment, unit ventilators, is that we deliver them to the site earlier, we store them, and our successful HVAC contractor installs them. Interestingly enough, as I pointed out in the green sheet, for every $100,000 worth of pre-purchasing we do, we save $6,000 in sales and use tax. So there is a nice advantage for doing that. not only do we get the material there quicker, we're pleased that we're going to be able to do that. That's a very typical thing that's happening more and more in the Commonwealth. Westchester School District just did that. They're doing a major project this summer and finishing it in the summer, and they pre-purchased everything. Today we opened bids to pre-purchase a transformer for a new stadium lighting. So it's something that does have an advantage and is something that we feel we have to do. You will see the rest of the bid schedule there. I warned in my green sheet that all of this is dependent upon the approvals from the Department of Ed, Labor and Industry, and Lansdale Borough. So it's critical that we move those approvals. We've had excellent cooperation with the borough. They have pushed very hard to review our drawings. When you go with a site plan such as this to do the minor site, and I say minor, I mean, we're not building new athletic facilities, but that's a 23-page set of drawings that they have to have their engineers review. Questions?
All right, I have a question. I'll lead them off here. Looking at the band room and auditorium, how do we propose to get the students from the main facility to the auditorium when we're doing the, I don't know what color that is.
When you're doing the orange. The only way that they ought to access is they must walk outside. Now, we have had a lot of discussion about that. And interestingly enough, on the day we have the hardest rain, they walk outside now when there is an inside roof. I talked today with Don Klein, and I've talked with Don Benham and Steve. If we have an entire assembly program scheduled and it rains, and if it's not an outside speaker, we may have to cancel it. I mean, there's going to be some inconvenience, but that's the way you will access that area.
I was concerned about, is that where the band practices, or they just store, I mean,
Practice on the stage.
they're taking instruments in and out that don't like to be in the rain either, and I would hope that they all have cases for them, but maybe not.
They're typically doing that now. There will be a way, I mean, if our bus circle, and we suspect that will remain open, hopefully, and parents, if it's a situation they have to drop something off, they could probably do that.
Okay. I missed one other, when we talked about the Brown, basically rooms 2 through 12 in that area, in the center of the main level, and the corridor is a different color. Maybe I missed that, why we're not doing the corridor at the same time.
We need to keep that throughout the entire process, since that is our heart line for mechanical systems. We need to keep that ceiling open. We will have temporary lighting, there will be no safety problem, but that ceiling will remain open till we do that, the rest of that purple, which would be in the summer of '95.
That's essentially a mechanical spline, and we worked it out with the engineer that if we can have that corridor, they can virtually tap off into any of the other phases. If you are aware, we've got tunnels under the building that are full of asbestos. We're trying to avoid any distribution from the ground up. So by that spine being there, we can then feed down to the lower level and up to the upper level.
For this and other projects?
I think we should consider it more often in the future. You know, it's not always popular, and
I know it isn't.
contractors are having a need to buy in, if you will, because they like the markup and they like the control of it. And but I think there are just cases where you have to have delivery.
There's other cases that you can make that there's certain items that are so expensive to purchase that you're knocking out a smaller guy who could possibly do the job but can't put out the money for the $100,000 boiler or whatever it be, but would be very capable of installation.
It's something.
It's a thought.
It's a thought that, I mean, I've had a lot of conversation with Dick, I've had a lot of conversation with Bill Truck from Biro, and we're gonna do it as much as we can, as long as it doesn't really create problems. We don't want to discourage bidders. For example, our boiler replacement at the high school, if you take the boiler out, I don't know how many bidders we
No
have.
sense doing it as a contractor, understand. Need a big warehouse too, don't we?
Trailer, storage trailer.
It doesn't.
Will the building be fully air-conditioned?
No. Not at all. Well, I
Well, I'm
should say not at
seeing
all,
here-
excuse me. The office area,
I'm hearing, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. I saw it here in three
Right.
places. You mean we're putting $14 million into the building and it's not going to be air-conditioned?
we're bidding it as an alternate for a four-pipe system with the understanding that we could buy univents that would have the coiling. We do not have built into the process the chiller, the placement of the chillers in the building.
Wow, when you consider, all the movement for longer school years and
Wasn't
all
there
that
when we
we're
went to
hearing, and
school.
we're not,
Well,
we're
Vicki,
doing a major renovation without air conditioning, just seems a little
I will share with you,
short-term.
when we were in year-round schooling, we have so few buildings that are air-conditioned. I worked up for Dr. Elko a cost to air condition our buildings, and believe me, it's earth-shattering.
I know, it's just that at this moment, we are
That's why we're
doing all
bidding
this
as an
work.
alternate, and you will make that decision
Okay.
so that the unit ventilators would have the chilled water coil in them and would only have to be piped to the
Right, I know a
wall.
lot of cost-conscious people, though, that I would think we might be foolish not to incorporate that into the renovations, but we'll see what you come back with. Okay, thank you.
Good thing.
Wasn't any air conditioning when we were there. We all lived to tell about it.
The second floor on that bridge, how structurally sound is that bridge to begin with, to put a second floor?
In doing a structural, one of the things that you need to understand and the community needs to understand, of our 19 facilities, that is absolutely our best built building. It's a fortress. There's not a bearing partition in it. And as a result, in Dick doing structural tests, we know we can support the second floor bridge.
We know the stability and all of that concrete structure when we once analyzed what it was going to cost to demolish it. And, that was one of the things that said it was worthwhile to save it.
Yeah, the idea is great because traffic there is, it's horrible traffic in that area, but I'm just concerned about adding a second floor to something, whatever. The other thing is, in your schedule, and maybe I'm missing it, when is the facing of the building going to be done? And there was an extensive amount of sidewalks that had to be repaired.
That's all gonna have sidewalk curbing. I mean, that will just, that has to be part of the site plan.
If you saw in the schedule, there are A, B, and C at the bottom, which are the exterior work, right? A was the one which would be the Penn Street, the new bus lane and what have you, followed by B, all right, which would be the rest of the sidewalks, the stormwater retention facilities, and we said C would be the parking, the back of the large parking lot, that we could not possibly do that during the school year, and so that was put to the summer of '95.
But where is the refacing of the building?
Refacing the building takes place in large chunks once again. The advantage of having a drawdown of population, we can work this building vertically, but we can't work it horizontally, meaning we can go corner to corner. I can put private on the front of the auditorium from here to here, but in the case, when we looked at a building full of youngsters, it would be impossible to have a break line between a first and second floor. So we will take, when we take the annex, we will be treating the outside and replacing the windows at the same time we're doing the interior work.
Okay, so the annex part is separated, and the front gets done. The auditorium I can see being separated, but when you're talking about the brown areas and things of that nature, the rest of the building, that'll have to be done in a summer program. You're going to be doing that during school, while kids are in school?
The windows will be replaced at each different level, wherever the phase happens to be, and through control joints, we will be able to install the drive-it material, even though it may not be installed above and below at the same time.
I'm concerned about the noise and the the disruption from outside when if you're working at one level, changing windows, and the other level's got classrooms, it's going to be, you've got scaffolding on top and classes below, you've got some incredible disruption there.
We have begun the draft of some of those general conditions from the very start. The board and everyone else asked the question, would the educational process be disturbed by the project? And the answer has to be yes. There is no way you can avoid it, but it is our intent to minimize it as much as possible. Question came up, I think, from Don Venema the other day. Yes, if we're going to be drilling holes through the floor, that will be done either before classes or after classes, right? Where we have known noisy operations, that will have to be, and we will be scheduling that. We will be telling the contractors this is the way they're going to have to do it so that we do minimize that.
The only other thing was that we had, it had been asked and we had requested that during all of this construction, that parents be informed of what's happening. And I think, this goes pretty far into one schedule, but I think we need to do a more, not week by week, obviously, but maybe month by month, type of update.
You need to understand that I have spent considerable time with the staff when Steve's new staff was pulled together on the 21st of April. Like all of our new staffs were pulled together. I made a presentation there. We've been meeting with department chairs, and I think we've tried to keep everybody up to speed. It's our intent to do a parent newsletter that we will certainly, to 9th grade parents, tell them where we're going and what we're doing.
Good.
Carmen, we may also put together a plan to involve parents, prepare some types of presentations to share with them the general kind of plan that you're hearing about here tonight.
Well, I'm sure somewhere along the line, kids will come back and talk about, there's somebody hanging out the window, doing scaffolding. I mean, whatever.
I hope not.
Well, let's hope not. But, it certainly, we promised the parents that we would keep them up to date so that they realize what's happening, and I think that's something that we really have to keep our promise on with this construction.
I think you as a board, you took a big step in giving us 925 youngsters, believe me. I mean, other districts have lived through this. We lived through it in Montgomery. We lived through it when we renovated the upper part of the classroom. Over here that was administration. We commingled with industrial arts and the renovations. And, Dick has lived through CB West. Upper Marion's doing it now. You have to do it. It's something that just has to be done to extend the life of the building. And there will be inconvenience, there's no doubt about it. But I think we make the best of them, and my hat goes off to Judy. We often talk about what she did at Montgomery. I mean, nothing could have been worse than Montgomery. And we look back on that, and the kids were happy, parents were satisfied, and the staff more than cooperated.
It may not be evident looking at those colors, okay, but we have tried to take into consideration in selecting those phases. Don and I were talking about it. Instead of including all of the home ec rooms in a single phase, we try to keep them in 2 phases so that we can keep programs going. We're not taking the entire area. Try to reflect that as we pick the various areas. The green, again, we put that as late as we could so that when we get into the season when there are a lot of outdoor available time for athletic things. So we try to take those, again, to minimize the impact on building education.
Now, when you do the gyms, they're supposed to be done May through...
They'll actually start late May.
Late May.
And be ready for September.
Right. What happens on rainy days in June?
We hope that we can be outside.
We get wet.
And
On rainy days in June? Or, I don't think so.
Days, we hope the classes can be outside, with the exception of rainy days.
Where were they planning on putting them on rainy days?
We'll have to work out a plan for that. We may keep the small gym available or the large gym available.
Phys ed people are very flexible.
Really?
Thrifty.
There were a lot of gyms that were used for polling places yesterday, and they worked out a way, as they normally do.
Thank you.
Question, Art.
If you look at the bottom of the site plan, you can see that we were able to renovate this building and not have to add all the little islands. I know trees are pretty, I know islands are pretty, but you know as well as I know that they're a total pain for the groundskeeper. And just keeping, if you just compare the two, is there any way we can go to the borough and find out if we could get those taken off the print, pick up some extra parking? They're a pain. I don't care.
I was instrumental in eliminating an ESC. I don't know that we'll be able to do that as people change and boards change and more people want more green. I mean, it's certainly a consideration, but if you look at Bridle Path and you look at Walton Farm, unfortunately, we're in the island business. And when you hit one of those at 2 o'clock in the morning with a snowplow, it's not the most pleasant thing.
I know they're pretty, but I'm a board member who feels there's plenty of green preserved there, and I'd like to see us try to get rid of them if we could.
Tom, I don't think a lot of it is our choice. I know when we sat down with Bridle Path and Walton Farm, we were amazed at how many little green areas we had to put in, and it was the townships that were doing this to us, not
As a
us.
past planning commission member, believe me, these things can be waived.
Well,
Speaking from experience.
I'll be amazed to see if the borough waives it.
Sometimes you have to challenge these things, because they can be waived.
We have been challenged.
Any other questions of Art or Dick? Great. Any members of the audience who'd like to ask questions regarding the renovation? Great. We'll move on to the next item. Textbooks adoption. Elementary Ed Charlie.
We are asking the board to adopt the Share the Music series for kindergarten to grade 5, which is published by Macmillan. It has a 1995 copyright date. Basically, there are 2 reasons and 2 parts to this request. We currently use 1984 Silver Burdette music books in our elementary schools in kindergarten through grade 5. It does not seem prudent to us to recommend additional copies be purchased of a book that's 10 years old. We have to purchase additional books for Bridle Path and Walton Farm anyway, so we're asking to ask you to adopt a new series, and we would purchase 300 copies of the 94 editions rather than those that are 10 years old. I should point out to the board that what we do, it's 1 set for each grade level in each school. It is not a matter that each youngster has a book, and that's consistent with our current practice. Beyond that, the movement of grade 6 from 2 locations where there are only 1 or 2 sets in each of those locations to 13 schools means that we need to provide a set of books in each of the 13 elementary schools. And again, it does not seem prudent to expand on books that are already 10 years old.
Any questions of Charlie?
Yeah, could we get some kind of a summed up price of this total page?
Yes. The cost of these adoptions that I've outlined, the total is a little more than $20,000, $20,085.
Is that in the budget currently?
Yes.
Charlie, I have a question. Bill, do you have another question?
No, thank you.
Question on the 6th grade. Right now, does the 6th grade in the middle schools have books for the 6th grade class?
They have books, Dick, but it's 1 or at most 2 sets of books and that's all that's there. And you have 2 sets, for example, at Pembroke, perhaps 1 or 2 sets at Penfield. They're 10 years old.
Okay.
And they're in bad shape because they've been used very heavily. So we don't think it's wise to simply expand on what they have by buying additional sets, because then we wind up with a major expenditure of books that have a 10-year copyright date on them. We think it makes more sense.
No, I'm not thinking of buying more of the old books. I'm concerning about continuing to use them. Are they in good enough shape? Have they been looked at?
Not really, because I thought about that too, then we could reduce the number.
Right.
But they're in really poor shape.
It's going to be, essentially what we're saying is these are going to be school particular, what version of the books they have, since
Yes.
we already have some of the books.
What it means that all of this,
between Gwynedd Square and
all of the 6th graders will have the same series. It will be the Share the Music series. In Bridle Path and Walton Farm, we propose here to put Share the Music. The other 11 elementary schools will continue with the Silver Burdette series that they have.
I understand, that sounds reasonable. Say, total cost of $20K.
Charlie, can I ask you, what's the difference between the Music and You by Silver Burdette that you're listing here, and a few years back when we got the Music and You by Macmillan for the 5th grade? Is Macmillan associated
Well,
with...
Music and You was a Silver Burdette publication when we bought them at that time, Vicki, and Learning to Listen to Music is a Silver Burdette book as well. They're both by the same publisher.
Okay, but the Macmillan and the Silver Burdette, I'm seeing those...
I'm asking us to purchase the Macmillan.
And the Music and You. What I'm saying is, do you have the dates? Do you know when we did purchase these? Because that's what I was concerned with. I was looking through some sheets, and I had this Music and You purchase from back in 1990, and it was listing then a copyright date for these 5th grade books for 1988. And when we use copyright dates, sometimes that doesn't really tell us how long they've been in use. So I've said this before, that when we do books, I prefer to see, how long we've actually utilized those books. Because
Well, the ones that we are replacing are 1984s, that I know.
Okay.
The ones that we're replacing, the ones that are used in grade 6 are 1984. I do not believe that there was a 1988, but I would have to go back and research that.
Yeah, I can show you. It's just one that I saw, and it was a $7,700 purchase for 5th grade, and it did have the same title, Music and You.
But even if it is a 1988 copyright date, the issue is the same, Vicki. Do you want to invest this kind of money in a book that has an 88 copyright date? We're going to have to spend the money anyway. I would rather see the board put it into the latest copyright date that's available.
Well, these though were purchased for the 90-91 school year, so even the copyright date doesn't tell you how long we're utilizing them. I'm just asking if we could move forward with when we purchased, so that we can
Well, the
have an
books
idea
you're
of the
referring
longevity
to.
of the books in
Okay,
use,
I know what
rather
you're
than
referring to.
copyright date, which is not necessarily.
Vicki, you're referring to the books that we opened. If it was 1991, it must have been purchases to put music books in the Gwinnett Square School. And what we apparently did at that point is bought the latest that were available,
Yeah, and
with the same line of reasoning.
right, it was 5th grade books, 30 per school. No, the way it was written was for all schools, but that's all. It's just I'd rather
Okay.
see when we bought them, that way we're evaluating that.
They should technically be in better shape than the ones that were bought in '84. I would suspect. Any other
If that's what the board wishes in the future, we can do that. That's not hard.
Any other questions?
I do. Charlie, I agree with the logic in buying the 94 book, but I have a question on the existing books. One, are they still available to purchase in that quantity? And what would be the cost to purchase them if they were available? So that we're consistent, out of date, but consistent.
I don't know whether the publisher would continue to carry books that are 10 years old. In this particular case, I can't answer either yes or no. What typically happens, a publisher continues to sell an edition until the supply is exhausted, and then they don't reprint. The difference in price, in all probability, would not be a significant one. I know that from having looked at catalogs in other areas recently.
They wouldn't have 300 around, they just want to
No.
get rid of it.
See, I hear you say the consistency, but the music department has looked at the impact of the use of either book with the planned course. Either one will accommodate, so it's not a concern to me that we have one series in 11 schools and a different series in the other 2. Not in this area. I wouldn't say that in all areas.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions? Any audience questions about the music textbooks? Glenn?
I'm just curious.
Glenn?
Could you come up too?
I understand.
Glenn Hyman, Tompkins Township. Just curious, are these prices that we're seeing here manufactured or publishers' prices?
These are the prices that we have to actually pay. These are the discounted prices.
They are the discount
Yes,
prices? Okay, and what's the average discount that you're receiving?
I can't say that. I can't tell you that, Glenn. I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. Can you maybe find out at some point?
Sometimes it
I'd
varies
be
with the
curious.
Sure. We don't, I will assure you, we don't pay any more than we absolutely have
Okay,
to.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Charlie. Move on to, let's see, secondary textbook, John.
Right. Green sheet 47 lists 10 textbooks that we're requesting for adoption for secondary subjects. Some of these adoptions are necessary for courses that were approved at the time our program of studies was approved for 1994-95. Others, for a variety of reasons, are being requested, some associated with reorganization, some with the age and appropriateness of the textbook in current times in some instances. I'll take a few minutes and go through each of these and then, of course, answer any questions that you have. The textbook for the English department is for the high school for 10th grade honors and gifted English classes. This is the new course, the interdisciplinary course that was instituted for this coming year at the high school. The home economics textbook is one for the middle schools. It's a book that we would anticipate using as a class set textbook. We would have one set in each of the 3 middle schools, and this is something that you can use in the program in all 3 grades. The home economics curriculum will be modified, as will many of our curricula in the middle schools through our reorganization process, and this was the book that they feel best fit the needs of that program. The music textbooks that you see there, those are also being adopted for many of the reasons that Charlie mentioned as it relates to our middle school music program, particularly to the related fine arts curriculum, which is a component that exists in all 3 grades. Also, these are class sets. They're not books, just like in home economics. They're not textbooks that are given to students to take home. They're used as a primary resource in the classroom. On the second page, in the science department, there are 3 books being recommended. The first one is for our 10th grade honors biology course, sometimes known as BSCS. This is a different approach to honors biology that has a thematic approach involving a molecular approach as opposed to an ecological approach. It's not that biology doesn't deem ecology less important, it's just that this particular book best fits what the department feels is a more appropriate approach at the honors level. This will not interfere with the science review process. We will continue to have honors biology, even though we're undergoing a review of that program. This is something that's sorely needed. The book is in very bad shape, and this certainly brings it much more up to date. You notice as we go through these, the various publishing dates. Most of them are all of them are in the 90s, thank goodness, but there are some that are unique to the particular course where there may not be, say, a 94 or 95 publishing date. Therefore, we go for the most recent one, the one that best meets the needs and the goals and curriculum. The global science course is for a semester course called Applied Ecology. The current textbook there is a 1986 edition. This certainly represents one that's a much better fit for this particular course. We have a course called Genetics as an elective option at the high school. The human genetics textbook is one that will be a much better fit for that course. It's not only just genetics, but also the study of embryology, and this is a very good combination of those 2 topics. In social studies, the 3 books that you see here represent, well, number 8 and number 9 represent additional levels of courses in social studies that we've introduced for the first time this year. During the first year of our social studies implementation, we brought these courses along at the level 4 and level 5, and for this coming year, we need a textbook for the honors level. These are the two books that are recommended for the level 6 classes at the high school, the one in economics and the one in sociology. The other course, the other book, number 7, that's listed there, is for our 11th grade American Cultures classes. This is the book that best fits the needs at level 4 and is part of our Tech Prep program. This is also one that we had decided and agreed to spread out over a 2-year period, and we now have enough books and to implement fully all of the components of the social studies program at the high school. The last book is a textbook that's needed as a class set for our manufacturing and construction courses at the high school. Manufacturing and construction used to be wood and metal, but we've combined those classes in recent years, and this is a book that addresses issues associated with those skill development courses. As far as the budget is concerned, the total number of books that are listed here, 1 through 10, represents about $38,000 worth of textbooks. About $30,500 of that is included in the special funding lines in the budget for next year. The remaining $8,100 is associated with the building allocations for textbook replacement. If they are large quantity items, we typically include those in special funding categories. Social studies, for example, itself is over $13,000, and that plus other books that we need to replace in some of these major subject areas make up the total special funding textbook in secondary. So the $38,000 is a part of what we have included in the budget for special textbook funding at the secondary level. I haven't gone through all the details of these, but I thought I would offer you an opportunity to ask questions about any that are here. Also point out to you that all of the books are available in the lobby for you to look at and to take home. If you've seen any, we can make arrangements for you to take home and examine any of the copies that are there.
Don, I have a special concern to look at the global science. Global has become a big buzzword in our society today. I have a concern. What is in the textbook? And I'd appreciate it if I could take one along with it.
Don, I'd like an economics book. For the same reason, social concerns and those that would overlap in areas that may specifically be under guidance or maybe health ed oriented. And just curious as to how much overlap there is. And would want it as a comparison and contrast of work being done on guidance review anyway.
Okay.
Don, we have on the very first one, the platinum for 10th grade honors and gifted English classes.
Judy, comment on that.
He said there's 40 needed, but yet in the request that comes up on the course titles for 10th grade gifted, we show that 67 students have requested that class. How are we going to do that with 40?
Dick, this is really a supplemental text that's being used in addition to the other material, so there will be some sharing on selected topics. This is not the primary textbook that they use.
Doesn't say that.
Okay.
So we're using another text that's, the current text is 68. That's the current existing text, or is that the current existing supplemental text?
That's the current existing supplemental text.
Okay.
And it really needs to be updated.
What's the copyright of the book that we're using as the primary text?
I can get that for you. It's a much later date, though.
Remember, in English, we have vocabulary books, we have literature books, and we have a general language arts book, so it may be a combination of those things.
Are there any of these other books that are supplemental text in addition to they're not the standard primary text of those classes?
All primary texts, some of them, as I said, are books that are class sets, others are books that we need to buy for each student to take home, particularly in the major subjects.
And that's in there in some cases, but supplemental is not. Okay. Other questions from the board?
Can I ask, what's the difference between the special funding line item in the budget versus putting it under textbooks, secondary textbooks?
Well, we have, as you know, building allocations lines in the budget for each building, a section for replacement textbooks. you'll recall part of the money that we allocate to each building for the purchase of supplies and replacement books is by building. The principal makes a determination once we give them the allocation as to how they're going to utilize those funds based on needs in supplies and in books. The amounts pretty much dictate whether or not we put it under special funding or expect the principals to purchase it out of their own allocation. If it's a very large quantity and we're buying a volume of books, it's very difficult to expect the principals to, from the amount that we give them, to have enough to buy it. Therefore, we have special lines for that purpose. So in the budget, you would see special textbook funding, secondary, and Charlie also has lines for elementary books.
Sort of like a large petty cash that's there, that's because of administrative,
No, I think that what he's saying is that when
it's over and above their normal.
when buildings have replacement techs, you need an extra one or an extra two, they're expected to buy those out of the per pupil allocation that we give them. But when we're replacing a large group of textbooks, we don't expect that to go to the per pupil allocation. And I think that what he's saying is that we have purchases of textbooks, and we have the onesie twosies that go on. We expect the principals to take it out of per pupil, and I think that's what the budget reflects.
Vicki, in the evening when we presented the curriculum side of the budget, we talked about the kinds of amounts that are devoted to different disciplines in those special funding categories. You might want to refer to that.
Okay. I just wondered what made the difference in where we're replacing it.
Any other board questions on the secondary textbooks? Any audience questions? Okay, great. Move on to course of studies.
The second topic under secondary ed has to do with classes and courses that have enrollments at this point in the year for next year under 20 students. But more specifically, in those classes where the class size guideline is 20 or higher. Clearly, we have some state mandated courses where the class guidelines are less than that. We also have some other courses because of the nature of those courses in technology ed and so forth, where the guideline is less than that. However, we bring this to the board each year after having discussions with the principals. We make determinations about whether we want to ask you to let those courses run with the numbers that are listed there, or we have also already made a decision to drop some courses, as you see on the second page of the green sheet. I'll go through these, explain to you why we're recommending what we are, and talk to you about why some of these circumstances arise. Remember, in the secondary schools, because of the elective nature of many of the courses, the numbers end up dictating the size of the classes, and in some instances, they're obviously under 20. If you look on the first page, at the top, I've simply indicated, for comparison purposes, the number of courses and the number of sections that we have come to the board with regarding exception requests. For this year, we're looking at 21 different courses representing 36 sections. There's some 900 sections of courses, by the way, just at the high school alone that are scheduled each year. As you look at the chart that's there in front of you, you'll see a column that identifies the title and level of the course, the class size guidelines, and these are the district class guidelines that we have used and have been in place since they were modified in 1991-92, the number of students who've requested each course, the number of sections that we've created, and the obvious average class size that we project. You also need to realize that this is subject to change as new enrollees come in, as changes occur over the year. Some of these may end up being larger than 20 before the summer's over. Others may drop below 20, but at this stage of the game, this is where we are, and these are the courses we'd like to talk about. The first two that I'll talk about together are the English 10 gifted and the World Cultures gifted at the 6.0 level. You'll note that we don't indicate a range of class size there, but that's because that represents a maximum. And in the case of gifted, it represents a true maximum number because of the state guideline nature of that. Now, 20 is an anticipated guideline, however, at the current moment, according to my friend Judy, just explained to me that guideline is currently 15. Although we expect that maximum number to increase to 20, we're not sure that it will happen.
They have given districts the new guidelines, but they have not formally been passed yet. So we're in a state of flux waiting to hear when they're going to be passed.
New guideline is 15?
It will, no, the new
No, the
guidelines
old
is
guidelines.
20. The old guidelines is 15. If they don't pass it, then we're going to have to deal with that.
For the gifted classes.
For the gifted classes.
But is it not true, Judy, the old guideline was 15, but I'll give you an exception, and the new one's 20, and I don't want to hear about exceptions? Is that?
That's about right.
As you can see, the projected class sizes for those are almost 17, and if we're limited to 15, we may be forced to create another section in some of these areas, but we're hoping that it will move to 20, and we'll be looking at these sizes. You also have different classes that have more than one section, but because of the nature of because of the number of students that choose them, when you divide those sections by that number by the number of sections, the number averages less than 20. So we show you those as well. For example, English AP, we have 39 students. We're not going to create a section of 39 students, therefore we create 2. That averages less than 20, therefore we bring it to you as an exception. You also see the creative writing as another course in the English department. Also, because of the number of requests, the average is less than 20. In the case of other courses, such as European History AP, Calculus 2, and I have one correction to make, Biology AP, those that have small numbers but only one section are those advanced courses typically that we bring to you because of the nature of those courses. We have very few that are the students that sign up. Because of their advanced placement or honors nature, we typically run those courses even though the numbers are less than 20. You can see in the case of European History AP, as I said, Calculus 2 honors, Biology AP, Chemistry AP, those are particularly highly advanced courses. Also the 5th level of languages. Spanish 5, for example, is 1 under 20. German 5 is 1 under 20. You'll also see languages. The first year of a language oftentimes does not have an enrollment number as high as we'd like, particularly at the high school level. Often those are students who have already taken 2 years of a language in 8th and 9th grade, and this may represent their second language that they choose to take, but they don't begin it until the high school. So we run into a problem if we don't offer the first year language, then the sequence is obviously disrupted. So therefore you see in the case of Latin 1 and German 1, the numbers are lower, but we ask for an exception because of that fact. There is one correction here, actually a cancellation. The Calculus AP that's listed there should not be listed there. That will be run as one section. It falls within the guideline, and somehow a mistake was made and it was listed. So if you can simply cross that out, we're not asking an exception for that one. It'll be one section. Also indicate to you that some other courses in the business department at the very bottom of that section at the high school are courses that we would like to run as exceptions. We expect the applied business communications course to increase. That often becomes a course that students who need to remediate an English course are scheduled into. And the number 13 we expect to increase above 20 by the time school starts next year, by the time we know the status of some of the remedial courses that kids take. I think that's about it as it relates to the exceptions that are requested here for the high school. Let me go through the rest of these and then I'll entertain questions that you might have.
Don, if you might, if I can ask, I think most of the board members are wondering if we cut any of these courses or don't approve the exceptions, do we save any teachers?
Well, as you can see, there are some in different departments. If we eliminate one of these courses, that means that the number of students who have signed up for that course will then be told that that course will not be run, and they will have to schedule something else. By reducing one section, that represents typically 1/5 of a teacher, if you can think of it that way. A typical teacher load is 5 subjects, in many cases 6, but typically it's 5. Therefore, it has the impact within a department of one section being dropped. If you drop 3 sections, you're looking at half a teaching position, roughly.
Some of these would be 6-period assignments, however.
Right, some of them.
So that deleting it would not alter the
Not in
staffing
every case. It's a good point, and that's the other point that I need to make about it, is some of them are 6 assignments, and might simply reduce someone with 6 assignments to 5, and therefore wouldn't have any staffing impact.
Well, that's my concern, is that they're so diverse that they're not in any focus
That's
in any
right.
one area, that by eliminating the class or not allowing for the substitution or the small projected class size, that we'd in fact not save any teachers. So it's, budget-wise, it doesn't affect us at all.
Dick, I looked at by subject and I started adding up some numbers, and we had talked about sizes also. And for instance, in the social studies, you've got 67, 16, and 55 is the number of children. Even if you cut out, you've got 7 sessions there, but that's, over 100 children that would have to be split up between what we have in social studies. So that would not cut our staffing, which is one that we're adding to the social studies area. The language, again, we've been battling this language problem for quite a while about whether to offer the 5th year of a language, and that's something that I don't know, if the board wants to open again, but if you're talking about a Spanish teacher and a German teacher, you're not gonna lose anyone there, because that usually is a 6 period for Spanish 5, and Spanish teachers don't usually teach German. I mean, my sister does, but on the other hand, not everybody does that. So,
It becomes
so in
an
those
issue with
senses,
certification, particularly in foreign language, where if we have foreign language teachers who have 2 certifications, we're lucky. 3 is very rare.
Don, what's the matter with taking introductory languages such as Latin 1 and German 1 and waiting for the following class next year to fill the class? Eliminating Latin 1, eliminating German 1, and wait next year till the kids come in, fill it in.
Well, it simply reduces that opportunity. If a junior wants to begin a 2nd-year language, then or a sequence of typically 2 years in taking a language, then they wouldn't have that opportunity.
Okay, but it's not like this child's being cheated. I mean, there's the old adage, you snooze, you lose. I mean, we're starting back here in Penfield and Pembroke. They become juniors and seniors, and shucks, you might take my Latin 1 away.
No, but what happens if
It's
they
like
take
we've been offering it for how many years, waiting for you to bite?
Yeah, but what happens if you took German in junior high, then you say, I don't like German, I want to take Latin because I want to be a doctor now all of a sudden. Now you're not going to let the person take Latin 1, 2, and 3 during their senior high career. That's not fair either.
That's the difficulty with this.
Well,
And it's difficult to choose which one.
Between a rock and a hard
It's not going to keep me up at night, when we got math, science, those important subjects.
But we need more doctors and less lawyers.
if we're going to continue with these, since we've split it up, I do have a concern which I voiced with you about the general science. You have 18 children who have requested that, and we're going back to my favorite subject, the applied sciences for the Tech Prep program. And I really believe that these children can be put in a more forceful, more advanced type of science program. I really don't think that offering the general science, I know you explained it's only for this year, but I really don't feel that it really needs to be there, that they can go to another subject, that they can certainly do as well and maybe be challenged a little bit more in the sciences. So that was my concern on that.
As you know, our plan is to introduce applied biology this year, and in fact, all of our what we had called general biology at the 4.0 level is now applied biology. There's been some curriculum development necessary to change that and make it in more of the applied nature. The second phase of that process for 95-96 is to introduce applied chemistry as the second level course in that sequence. Once that happens, this would disappear.
Right, but I think if we did not approve that course, what would they take? You know, if they wanted to take another science course,
They
then
might take another science.
they would
might
take another
elect,
science course.
A descriptive chemistry or any one of the number of other courses that exist now.
I just, again, and I've stated this before, I've had a problem with offering the general courses. And if we cut it out, then they're gonna have to try something else. And if they try something else, they'll probably do well in it and be forced to move along on it. And, you know, the sooner we move away from the general courses, I think the better our students are going to be and the better educated they're going to be for, you know, the coming years.
Okay, there are two levels of this, and I fully understand your point, and I agree with you. But there are two levels of this. There is a general science B and an A. There's about 35 students enrolled in the other level. They differ according to the topics they're covered. This is kind of like a second level 4.0 class in science.
I can't get rid of that one, but this one's on my list, so I can get rid of this one. But next year I'll try to get rid of that one too. So.
I think we'll do that for you.
Why don't you look at that course and see what the alternatives would be for those students?
I'm a little less concerned about 18 kids, but I think that there have been over the years some recurring ones that I think that we ought to consider what the policy is. I think that some of the language at the 5 level, and patterns develop over the years, and we've got to look at some of those. If there's 7 kids in a 5th year of a language, we've got to really look if we're going to offer that every year. And yes, some kids might be hurt. I think some of the other AP classes, when you look at, especially in the sciences, and I realize that the science is coming up, and I think this ought to be one of the issues that they address when you do sciences. It would appear that if we take examples, but in the science area, this is hit regularly. AP biology, AP chemistry. If I put those two together, I've got a good class. And we have to take a look at it, because now we're running 2 classes, one of each, because they're AP courses. It may come to the time where we need to offer one year and one the next year, or come up with a pattern so that we fill them up, because these same kids are taking both of them. If we didn't offer one, they take the other. And I think we need to start looking at some of that so that we fill up these classes, especially in the AP. And we need to look at, as we get into the languages that 5th year, when we have a pattern of low use.
We've discussed the fifth year quite often, and it's something that we really need to address. The 5th year of a language. Since we've been on the board, I think all of us have said, you know,
we faced the same situation in all the 5th year languages at one time or another. Of course, when we moved to a second high school, that problem will get worse.
Or get eliminated.
What are the implications of college entry to 4 years of language versus 5 years?
Well, I think the 5th year language enables students to take the AP level courses. That's one aspect of it. I'm sure different colleges, depending on what the students are going to study. If you're going to have a student that's going to major or study foreign languages, then I'm sure they encourage as many years as you could possibly get in that language. We're not unique. There are other schools that offer 5th year and other districts that stop at 4. It's really a philosophical position that we've offered the 5th year language for many years.
If we go to 4, are we going to prevent anybody from getting into college?
I can't imagine it would prevent anyone from getting into college to
Maybe
study.
the top kids in the premier colleges, but only those top kids that are going to go to the premier colleges take the 5th year of language. That's why they're so small. But you will affect, there are colleges that look for 5 years of language, and they're the ones, they're the most focused kids, they're the most able kids, and I think it does have an effect. But on the other hand, it's tough to put 7 kids in a 5th year language class.
Right. Could be combined like we are with the Latin 4 and 5.
Well, I'll be certainly happy to look into that and study that. As far as, it'd be a little late to do that for this coming year unless you're, have a mind to do something with the fifth-year languages. I wouldn't want you to make a decision to deal with just one language, no matter what the decision
Now,
is.
you're recommending them combining Latin 4 and 5 together, are you not?
In one case. Yes,
And
in
then
the case of.
Japanese 2 and 3?
In the case of Latin only, yeah.
And what about Japanese 2 and 3? Aren't I
Right.
reading that right? You're
That's right.
also-
I didn't get to that part yet.
Oh, okay. I know, but I'm just saying, when you said there was a problem with maybe combining.
A question. I was under the, I'm sorry. I was under the impression that all of the fifth-year languages were AP. Is that true when I
They
look at
all
Spanish 5 and German
qualify
5?
them for AP classes, that's
Okay.
right.
On the list, they don't list AP, but the Spanish 5 and German 5 on page 1
They
of
are.
your sheet are AP.
That would enable them to take the AP test, that's right. If I can finish the rest of it, maybe it'll answer some of your questions and maybe generate some more. At Pembroke, Penndale, and Penfield, of course, our reorganization will result in some circumstances like we've talked about at the high school as well, although in some cases they're unique. You know that we began our double acceleration in mathematics in 7th grade, and that's where some of the most able students qualify to take Algebra 1 in 7th grade. Others who are accelerated begin in 8th, and the majority of the students begin Algebra 1 in 9th grade. As you can see, the number that qualify to begin Algebra 1 in the case of Pembroke is less than 20. In Penfield, there happen to be more than 20, therefore you don't see it listed as an exception. You also see in German and in Latin, in different schools, the number of students who have selected those as the first-year language is down. And I think as we've experienced that in the middle schools, that may continue. On the second page, Dr. Braun and I have discussed the status of the courses that are listed there and have agreed to drop them for 1994-95. Some of those we expect not to even list in the program of studies next year. You can see the number of requests, marketing and sales in the business department. Office employment is one that will be dropped from the program of studies and won't be offered anymore. Telecommunications, many of you are aware that we are suggesting for 1994-95 that we not run that course, those two courses, Telecom 1 and Telecom 2. We still expect to provide some of the services or some of the aspects of that program through career education, where students can choose to work in the television studio and learn and develop some of the skills associated with that. We also hope to start a club associated with the television program. This does save us a position. We have a teacher who's going on a sabbatical, and our thought for next year was not to run this program, to offer those services through career ed, and by providing a club, we think this makes some sense for next year. For the second year in a row, the sexuality elective major has attracted fewer than the number of students we would like. Most of those students are not electing that as an additional health elective. They all are taking the required component of that. When we had a fully elected program in health, the choice of sexuality was much higher. Reading enrichment minor, this is about the third year, I think, that we haven't attracted enough students there. That may not appear in the program next year. The 9th grade remedial English student will be transferred to another section, probably an applied communications section. We also, as you mentioned, are combining some courses for next year. Computer programming 3 and 4, since they're project-oriented, that combination is rather easy. The language combinations are not quite as simple, although at the higher levels we can do that where it's appropriate. In Latin, we only have one section of Latin 4 with 11 students in it, and 5. We'll combine those two. We end up with a total of 16. We can do it with that number. When we get higher numbers of students, it's difficult to combine those upper-level languages. Japanese 2 and 3, we have a total of 16 students in those two Right now, we hire a teacher to teach 2 sections of Japanese. We have the first level and the combination of level 2 and 3 now. Also, we often combine courses in technology ed, where we offer a regular course and advanced. In the case of manufacturing, we will simply incorporate the advanced manufacturing course, give us a total of 50 students to spread out over 3 sections. The class size guideline is lower there. Okay. Other questions that you have?
Questions? I think Latin should be a required course for all students. I wouldn't want to see that one stuck. Two, we have a problem if we cut one course, and the child, the small number of children, whatever, the 10 students, have to select something else, that's liable to bump that into more sections, and we'll have more problems instead of having eliminated one.
Or it may just fill up a section a little bit more.
Right. It might do that, but it also might bump something into a 4th section or whatever. Can you eliminate or consider eliminating the 5th year of a language and offer it as a club instead, like I think you mentioned in here?
I don't think certainly the 2 would compare in what we provide to the kids. Being a member of the club is not going to give them the qualifications they would get taking a 5th year of the language. I wouldn't equate that. We do have some clubs in the foreign languages.
Whatever,
But I
as an
wouldn't want to
option,
compare the
if
2.
we were to cut it, whatever. When you sign up for a course at college, they have a set number of sections already preset, and once those 3 sections or whatever are filled, it's cut off and you have to pick something else. We do it differently. We say, okay, kids, what do you want to sign up for? And then we accommodate them by building other sections.
In many cases, that's typically been our practice. That's correct. We don't close courses in most instances. We allow students to choose the courses from the list that the board has approved to offer for the coming year. Then we look at those numbers, then we make some judgments about whether we want to combine them, we want to drop them, or in the case of low numbers, we bring them to you for your consideration for running them as an exception. It would be difficult to predict what you're going to get since our course selection process all occurs at one time. We don't even know how many are selected until we enter all of those requests into the computer and see how many students have selected each of these. We do go back on occasion and combine things, or have certain courses dropped and have students take other courses. So
The question would be, who would have priority?
that's right.
You know, that
Lottery.
I mean, well, they all do their course selection at the same time, so you would have to do it by grade. You know, that's kind of, that'd be an interesting concept. I'm not sure if
I think it'd be very
if it would be fair to all students.
As long as your kids got the courses they wanted, as long as my kids go to the new school, no problem.
Actually, the way we're doing it now accommodates the kids the best, and
Yeah,
given
it
that it's a
does.
public
It
school,
does. It's just a little more expensive that
It gives them
way.
all an equal opportunity. When you're going to college and you're paying to go, they can restrict the classes all they want, right? Here again, we're providing public education and opportunities for all the students equally. So the way we're doing it, at least, hopefully presents them that opportunity, and it's our responsibility to look at the exceptions rather than all of them, okay? I would think.
Okay.
It's my opinion. Agreed.
I give mine.
Any other questions for Don? Vicki?
I've got one short one.
Anybody
In
awake
Latin,
out there?
for Latin, we've got 4 and 5 combination. We talked before, all the 5th level of languages are AP. Am I going to expect that while we combine 4 and 5, that at least some of those kids are going to come out and qualify for the AP exam?
And remember, that's part of the difficulty of combining them, particularly in large numbers.
Well, that's,
But in this case,
I understand,
Latin,
but and
yes.
particularly because of the AP and the level of difficulty associated with the AP courses. Okay.
I would expect they to be prepared for that.
I understand. Okay.
Any other board questions? Any other questions from the audience? Big folks going. on this particular subject.
Hi, my name is Megan Logan. I'm a junior at the high school. I have a couple questions. I was curious why you're going to cancel the telecom 1 and 2. I understand that the teacher's going on sabbatical. Is that like a reason why you're going to cancel it this year, and then like for the year 95 to 96, are you going to like reinstate it or something like that? I was just curious about that because it says here like 35 kids went to register for this class. That's a lot to bring down to the school to the guidance counselors and say you have to choose a new thing. A lot of people want to get into television, and if they take a career study, a lot of students, it'd probably only be able to help like 5 or 6 students. And like for my personal opinion, if I wanted to take it, I couldn't take it my senior year, like career study, because my course load is just too heavy. I couldn't drop enough courses. So I was just curious to why you're canceling that.
Well, I think I indicated that what we hope to do is allow for students who are involved in career study to learn some skills associated with telecommunications. And also, our hope is to create an extra duty club where students can spend some time learning and practicing some of the skills that they might get through that program. Granted, it's not exactly the same, but we're suggesting that as an alternative.
Okay.
But you're also right, Megan, in the fact that, 1 or 2 sections to find a teacher certified in telecommunication is
Yeah, I mean,
is a
I can
real
understand
problem.
how that could cause a big problem. I mean, I'm sure there are teachers that could operate it, but they're not certified to do it, so that would cause a lot of problems. I was just curious that if he does come back, or if you decide to have a new teacher, would you reinstate it for the year afterwards, like 95?
One of the
96,
things the task force looked at also was expanding the educational program in telecommunications, and that's something that we may, look at. We certainly were talking, the task force itself talked about upgrading what is being taught and with some new equipment. So I think we'll come back with Dr. Venema and kind of look at the course itself and talk to him about what's a better course or what's a better way of working that course so that we can upgrade the telecommunication program itself.
Okay.
I think one of the things that's occurring that the board has talked a lot about applied courses, and you see your fellow students right here on these cameras and some out in the hall, and several students are involved in the studio production.
Take that away, they won't be able to do that.
No, they will continue to do that.
Okay.
Mr. Gilmer is going to continue to work with the students that are interested in telecommunication in a very active way, and we're going to expand television productions. I believe there's going to be a weekly news show that's begun at the high school.
Yeah, that was another reason.
And some videotaping of different school district events, so there'll be more opportunities for students to participate in a hands-on program.
Yeah, because a lot of students had heard how you were trying to make Channel 16 bigger, to expand and show people of the community what we do and what exactly is involved, and
Get rid of that very interesting rolling scroll.
It's a choice word there.
Things are, well, at least I find them interesting.
I think part of it, if you talk to Mr. Weir, the whole concept of telecommunications and providing more for the students has been discussed, and I think we've set out, and Mr. Weir certainly will reiterate on this, that we've set out a program that we want to expand as much as possible, and Mr. Gilmore certainly is going to be working on that. The actual education program, that's another phase of it, but the opportunities are going to be there for all 40-some-odd children to work with it, and hopefully extensively, so that we can get rid of the blue screen.
We really expect to have more hands-on kinds of opportunities as a result of the expansion that we're talking about. I think that in itself is an important way to learn about telecommunications.
There will be more opportunities for student involvement. I think Dr. Bond, Dr. Venema, and I, the board is supportive. We're all committed to that. More student involvement, more experiences.
Okay. The other question I had was about languages. I understand that with the first-year language in sophomore, junior, like in the high school, One of my friends takes the languages, and this is her second language, and her teacher has to stick her and 2 other students in a separate room from the other students because it is their second language. It is much easier for them to grasp the concept of the language and excel very quickly. Like, she said that they could probably get through the first year and half of the second year in 1 year. Because it is their second language, it is very easy for them to pick up the verbs and the conjugations. It's very easy. Being a language student myself, if I took another language, it would just be easier than when I first started. But I understand that the rest of her class doesn't really, care about it, I guess is the correct way to put it. And the teacher lags and lags about it. And unfortunately, the students that do really want to take it because they want to major in college or they want to be deal with languages and when in their careers, it's a shame that they can't have a class. She said, one of the teachers said that they did used to have a class where students with their second year language or third year language, they had a class just for them so that they could learn quickly. So it wasn't a waste of their time. It was, and the other thing is for 5th year, I'm going to take my 5th year next year. And the reason why I want to take it is because I want to major in languages and hopefully do it with my career. And to me, it'd be very important to take my 5th year. And I know a lot of other students would like to take their 5th year, but unfortunately, they, especially for I take Spanish, there's a lot of people in the community that speak Spanish, and it's really nice to be able to communicate with them. And they can't take it because they have to double up if they want to take biology or chemistry, something that they can't take it. And that's a lot of reason why people drop out after their 4th year, because they have to take 4th year to go into college, the college that they want to get into. And I just think it would be a shame to drop the course, because I think it's a really good course. And you're trying to combine a lot of the courses. I don't think you could, and you couldn't really combine 4th and 5th year because 5th year and 4th year is a big difference. Like in 5th year, you read novels in that language, and in 4th year, you're still trying to get the last verb tenses and things like that. So it would be too complicated to put them together, is what I'm trying to say. Like there's more as in speaking, and they watch cartoons and things like that in Spanish because they're really fluent, starting to get fluent in the language. So.
Megan, if you decide to become a Spanish teacher, you come back and see us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? In the back? I was pointing out the lady. Okay.
I'm Bill Taylor from Lansdale, and I have a suggestion which you may have heard, but I hope it stays alive. When you're in the position of trying to figure out the cost per hour of education for, say, 5 students in an advanced class, especially one that is not equipment intensive, doesn't require a swimming pool or a lab or something, could you look for using the people in the community who are qualified, possibly not the least bit interested in carrying a full teaching load, but might like to carry 1 or 2 evenings or afternoons a week with a few students? Now, I can imagine all kinds of problems, but I can also think of getting out of this mold you apparently are falling into a lot. And I think we'll be here, as you say, with 2 high schools, it'd be worse probably. I think it's worth a task force. I mean, you're talking about one teacher costs how much?
Labor
Thanks.
negotiations.
Any other? Was a lady in the back?
I do this so well, I just need to come up here again. I have to say, I am appalled that you're thinking or even discussing the idea of dropping a fifth year of the language. En Carmen de ti no lo puedo creer.
Bueno, así son las cosas a veces.
You know, if anything, this country needs to start languages early. You know, and here we're talking about eliminating
You want subtitles on this one?
Is that Spanish 4 or Spanish 5?
No, that's Spanish many years.
Southern Lehigh School System has an immersion program in their elementary schools. And if anybody really wants to get turned on to foreign language training, you should go up and visit that school. It is just incredible. The children start in 1st grade in a total immersion. They have native speakers all the way through the elementary school program. And by the end of first grade, they're speaking as well as some of our fourth and fifth year students. The point is, we need to be starting language earlier, not eliminating language. You know, as an educated person in this world today, you need to be bilingual. And, you know, we have 2 languages here in our own country. Spanish is very quickly becoming the second language of this country. You know, please don't drop the 5th year. I think that would be just an awful mistake. Thank you.
What school was that?
It's Southern Lehigh. It's the Liberty School in the Southern Lehigh school system. It's in Cooperstown. It's between Quakertown and Allen.
Carol, I do agree that we need to start our languages sooner, and I'm not quite sure when our language review is. I'm not real sure about the Spanish, about the 5th year, whether or not the students are really getting what the quality that we really would want.
I
And
think
that
the AP
I think
program
is
is
something that has
excellent
to
in
be
the
looked
5th
at.
year. You know, I taught at the high school first semester, and the 5th year program, from what I could see, was excellent. Not every school, I'm in Methacton now, and we don't offer AP in 5th year. We offer 5th year, but we don't offer AP. I think we have an extremely strong 5th year program here in North Penn. You know, again, would you take the gifted child who's in an AP chemistry course out of chemistry if he's going to be a chemist? You know, it's the same thing. Why would you take the child who's gifted in language out of that language class? You know, they may be the next foreign diplomat. You know, they may be solving the world's problems because they can communicate. You know, our country, when you travel abroad, people, when we go in and we expect everyone to speak English, that's an awful thing. You know, that's where we get this ugly American complex. You know, they look at us and go, oh, you know, we're American.
But I think Megan and Carol hit on the same thing about if you drop them down, then we may actually be able to see the numbers rise on how many are taking them, because everything's so crowded at the high school, and you hear us say that many would like to be.
On a positive note, one of the things that we're experiencing at the middle school with the reduced number of electives in 8th grade is a significant increase in students taking foreign languages. Something like 150 to 200 more students enrolling in a first-year language in 8th grade. So,
But 7th grade is still just an exploratory, right? There
seventh.
isn't
I'm talking about 8th as the first
Okay.
year.
There
7th
isn't
grade
a
is
choice.
exploratory for everyone.
Yeah, I'd like to see them all go down.
Well, I started learning Spanish before I learned English, so I'm a proponent of learning it as soon as possible, so I certainly
Yeah,
won't
but
change
let
that.
them keep going. Don't stop them.
Mrs. Davis, I like that too. I'd be a strong proponent to offer something like a foreign language for younger children. If we could come up with a way to offer something such as Spanish for young children at a very young age, in lieu of some of the other programs we have for them, I would be the first one to support it.
Good. Thank you.
When is our Don, when is our language up for review, our foreign languages?
I'd have to check the date. I'm not sure.
Any other questions from the audience?
You'll have to run it.
No, thank you.
I'm Swati Doshi, senior from North Penn High School and school board liaison. I just wanted to say, I don't know if you guys really realize how important these AP courses are to the juniors and seniors in the high school. First, concerning the languages, there might be only a few students enrolled in the 5th year AP classes, but they are really, really important. Most colleges require you to take a language during your college years, and these AP courses allow at least a few students to be able to be exempt from these courses in college. Not only do they save the students time during college, but they save you so much money also. I mean, North Penn is wonderful in the opportunities that they have given to us, and taking away the 5th year would be very, very harmful, I believe. Also, when you guys were stating offering languages earlier, I think that would be an excellent idea. I went to an orientation at American University, and we all had to get up and say how many years of a language we had studied. And there were kids coming up saying, you know, I studied 8 years of Hebrew or 8 years of Russian, and this was all from their high school. And it would be wonderful if we could start the languages earlier. Also, Mr. Repkamp, when you were discussing AP Biology and AP Chemistry, you stated that the students who were taking AP Biology were probably also taking AP Chemistry. And I strongly disagree with that because the two classes are completely different. Usually the student who's taking AP Biology doesn't have the time or is probably not even interested in AP Chemistry. So also, since they're senior courses, you had suggested alternating the courses, like teaching AP Biology one year and then AP Chemistry the next year. If it's your senior year and you want to take AP Chemistry and you're only teaching AP Biology, then you totally miss out. And that's just, I don't think that would be very fair. That's basically it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
So more students?
Any other audience comments? Okay, we'll move on to budget discussions. Okay. I think the first thing is there were some questions raised at the previous 4 budget sessions that were asked upon the administration. We can wait Dr. Elko up here. I think we're going to address some of those.
Good morning, everyone. After Dr. Veneman's presentation in your packet on classes under 20, you see something in there called Preliminary Budget 1994-95. Mr. Kelly has made some adjustments to the budget based upon some line changes, some assessment changes. Basically, it's about 2 mils less it amounts to about 2 mils less in terms of increased taxation. I'm only going to take a few minutes and highlight some of these areas. The next page, there are 8 items listed in which the board had some questions. I'll start with professional fees. Mrs. Mangle asked for some information on professional fees, and that's contained in the packet. Mr. Kelly put that together. On the next page, 94-95 budget influences. Mr. David Whites, one of our board members, asked for those major influences impacting the 94-95 budget, and they are listed. The following page, Mrs. Mangle asked for a utility rate cost comparison. You see sewage rates. Art Wood put together a chart which shows what we would pay if we could pay the lowest rate of any of our schools versus current rates. And there is a difference of about $56,000. On the next page, you see electricity. Again, our lowest rate comes from PP&L. We only have a few schools with PP&L, but if we were able to capture that same rate throughout all of our schools, we would save about $300,000 annually. So talk to PICO, see what they have to say about that. On the next page, unfunded or partially funded mandates. Several board members have been concerned about the mandates that are required by Pennsylvania and by the federal government. We put together a list of some of those key mandates. Pennsylvania School Boards Association, which our school board are members, the Montgomery County Legislative Committee, which Mrs. Leahy serves as a member, have been lobbying our local legislators to eliminate some of these mandates that you see on this page. Some of the big ticket items are listed there: special education and gifted education. These are the amounts of money after we subtract out our state reimbursement. There are reimbursements for some of these areas, but we have subtracted them out. At the bottom of that page, you see some items that aren't annualized, but are big ticket costs over the last couple of years. I will come back to computer purchase options in just a moment. And if you flip through that, there's about 6 pages on that. One of the questions that was asked by the board was, is it legal to purchase equipment out of the bond fund? And Mr. Potash was consulted and wrote some information for you that Mr. Weir will give you that will tell you that under the bond fund, it is absolutely legal to purchase equipment. And it was legal to purchase the land, the Hull farm, out of the bond fund as well. The other question that was asked was related to whether you can impose a fee on all students, like an activity fee. Mr. Potash has advised us that he feels that legally you cannot do that. You have a free public education here. You cannot impose a fee on students who aren't taking advantage of an activity. And he also feels that you would have no way to collect that because you could not punish and be punitive toward those families or students who would not want to pay the fee. He said you could collect a user fee, however, as some of the school districts have done, and Don Ryan reported to you at the last budget session. Finally, there is a correction in here in the packet on the starting costs for Walton Farm and Bridle Path, and you see our corrections. We had put in $6,800, and it should have been $68,000. We left a zero out, and that, of course, changed the bottom line total. The final part in the packet is a report on technology. Several board members asked Mr. David Weiss to work with our staff and come up with some options, and there are a few options available. I don't know the board's pleasure, whether you want to take the time tonight to go over that in detail, or that can be done at another night.
Another night, please, that would be my opinion.
Fine, that will be another night. I apologize to David, but
I prefer David.
Exactly, it's his hard work on this, right.
I believe that concludes all of the information, with the exception of the list of purchases from 93-94 capital equipment, which is still being obtained. And Don, was there anything else that you were pulling together at this point?
Other than just to answer a couple of points that were made the other night regarding staffing and some of the needs I have at the high school, I'd just like to make a few points on that, and indicating to you that the primary need that we have on staffing in the high school is in math, and in science, and in social studies. And we have been encouraging students to select more and more instructional periods, and what we're finding out is that they're doing that. And they're doing it in these areas. Even though we're looking at an increase of about 100 students at the high school, in the math department, for example, we have over 200 students electing math this coming year. Some of them are strongly encouraged to do that, particularly in applied math. So we see that circumstance occurring in math, we see it occurring in science, and we see it occurring in social studies. And as a result of that, the additional staff that we requested. So I just wanted to address that again, since it was brought up the other night.
Charlie, there was a breakdown on those music. Were we able to get that on how each school and the music program was handled?
I'm not sure I'm clear on what you're asking.
Well, we had asked about,
You did mention that, you know,
you
we've
can get back
omitted
to
that,
me.
Mrs. Leahy, and I apologize, and we'll come back with that information.
okay.
Okay, are there additional board questions, because?
I
given
have some,
tonight-
but what I would rather do is take this home and study it, because, you know, I'm
There's
getting a
a lot
little
there.
cranky, and I would like to hear what the audience has to say. And it's a long night for everybody, and we expect administrators in here tomorrow by 7:30, 8 o'clock, or something like that. So I just as soon hold my questions, study these, and I will be back.
Any board questions?
I second Donna.
What, the
I
strike?
third.
We need to decide whether we're gonna ask questions about the budget and talk about earned income tax at the same time, or do we wanna split those two topics?
Well, my view from the beginning is on earned income. That's a nice discussion, and if somebody wants to talk about it, I can, but I was interested in, and I think from the beginning I said, we're gonna deal with the budget first, at least a preliminary adoption, and then talk about earned income. And if somebody wants to talk, I can address specific issues, but I'm not prepared to make any kind of recommendation from finance until we've done preliminary.
Can we just listen to comments from people that came tonight?
Audience and citizens.
I don't have a problem with that.
That's part of the budget.
Yes, I don't have a problem with that.
Process. Okay.
Why was it advertised, though, that we were going to discuss consideration of advertising a notice of intent to enact an earned income tax? I mean, I got this out of the reporter, and I was like, where did that come from?
And as we were, my recommendation at the beginning of this process, when we talked about earned income, was when we do the preliminary budget, we'll raise the issue of earned income. And when the legal time to advertise was, I think, Monday or whenever, and at that point, I was under the impression we were gonna go for a preliminary adoption tonight. I've recommended that we not do that because Dennis Kelly and Dave White's aren't here tonight.
Well, I knew about the preliminary budget, but I didn't know that we were moving with the earned income tax at that immediate decision until I read the legal notices.
I'm sorry, the
But-
legal, what we would move on, the first move that we have to make, if we're gonna continue to consider it, the first thing we have to do is to have a resolution to announce our intent to consider it, if you will. We have 3 weeks of advertising. The motion that we would have considered tonight, had we passed the budget, was to advertise our intent to do it. That has to happen for 3 consecutive weeks prior to us enacting it,
But that
which
is
is
still
30
an
days
intent.
prior to it going in force. And that's all we were talking about
But we
doing,
would
not
have-
enacting the tax.
Okay, but it would be an intent. You need a consensus to say it's our intention to enact it.
Yes,
Did we get
But
exactly.
that was
Did we
that
get
was
that?
contingent on the preliminary budget, and we haven't done
Well-
anything with that, so the earned income has been pushed back.
I'll defer most of it to the audience because they obviously did come out tonight and we're gonna be back here on other nights. But I would have to say that we have to look back at what Berkheimer presented to us, and I think it should be said that nowhere in their little scenarios and profiles did they give us a first-year situation with the municipalities collecting in January. That scenario did not exist. We had 1 year, the first year, at 1% with them, and then a second year where we had a full 4-quarter period with then the municipalities
Well, they gave us one with
collecting
all
on
the
half.
municipalities. They
But-
gave us a scenario with all the municipalities collecting, so you can go with that as a general idea
It's a
of what
different
this is.
cycle. It's a
I
different cycle
understand,
than our first year.
but
I'm
if you're
saying
going
that
to, if you're gonna look at it, in the earned income, if you're gonna look at it as what you think you're going to get, that would be a figure that you would probably go with, because it is the lowest figure.
Okay,
We'd be
can you let
prepared to
Ralph
address that
this?
next Thursday.
We're gonna do this next Thursday, is that what you're saying for the earned income tax discussion?
If I understand it correctly, if we were to pass our intention tonight, at the same time we adopted a preliminary budget, now we've met the legal timelines necessary to enact it by June the 30th. If we don't do it tonight, we no longer have enough time to announce it for 3 weeks and a month before we actually pass it. And as I understand it too, you have to do the budget and the announcement of income tax at the same time. The
Final
The
adoption.
final adoption has to
Final
coincide.
At the final adoption.
Right, so,
Well, I'm not supportive of the earned income
And-
tax, so.
well,
I'm
and
just
that's what
trying to
we'll have
say
a more,
something.
we'll have the Berkheimer folks here Thursday to discuss that more, is that true?
No?
No, I'll have some additional information though.
That you'll have the additional
Yes.
information, not the Berkheimer folks. So, if there's no more board discussion, if you wanna take this home and review it, then we'll open it to audience questions and comments about that. Any other board comments? Fine.
Do they have copies for the budget? Are there budget copies back there for them to pick up any of the budget
Not out
summaries?
there.
I
Not
think it's
tonight.
a good
Tonight's
question.
meeting?
Tonight's not a budget meeting.
It's on the agenda.
Well, we've had them 4 nights in a row. If they were interested in the budget, they could have come out during the budget time.
Now,
We have questions.
Questions, Mr. Curtis, now? Sorry you had to wait that long, but that's the rules.
Understand. I'm here now, and I'm a little underdressed to be the solicitor of the Board of Commissioners of Upper Gwinnett Township. I apologize for that, but I was at baseball practice this evening, and I figured I better be here by 7:30. I think now I probably could have went home, showered, ate.
Taking a few hour nap.
And a
Had
few hour
breakfast and
You have to
come
come
back.
more often, you'll know what the time schedules are like.
I was requested to come by the Board of Commissioners to find out whether or not this board was going to adopt an earned income tax. And unfortunately, from the discussions I've heard this evening, that's not on the agenda, but it will not be discussed until next Thursday. I'm not sure whether or not the board is aware of the time constraints that the local municipalities are put under by this earned income tax and by your discussions of it. I think you've seen some of the newspaper reports, and what happens, unfortunately, is that the local municipalities have to declare an intent to pass a tax which we have no information about because you have not yet debated it, discussed it, and decided whether or not you're going to adopt it. It's a very unfair position to put the municipalities in. I can't say it any other way, because that's exactly what it is. It's unfair because of the fact that this impacts all of our residents. It's unfair because it impacts whether or not the local municipality should adopt this type of tax, not necessarily because it needs the revenue, not necessarily because it wants the revenue, but because it can then protect its own residents by reducing the real estate taxes. And that's an untenable position to put a municipality in. I hope you understand that, because that's what you're forcing us to do. Some of the municipalities have already done that. They've unfortunately passed resolutions indicating that they would give notice to you, and I think it has to be given by this Monday, that they will enact an earned income tax and therefore take a share of yours. We have no way of knowing if you're going to adopt a 0.5%, 1%, whether you're not going to adopt it, what the revenue is going to generate, what the collection rates are going to be, how we're going to collect it, how you're going to collect it, whether we're going to be able to collect it. And at the same time, we have to go out on the limb before you do and take a position in public with our residents in which you can back away from after we've done it. Now, I would call that unfair. I don't know any other way to put it, but that's the way it is. This evening, I understand you're now going to discuss it next Thursday. That's too late, because our board has to meet by special meeting on Friday evening so that we can discuss the resolution, because we wanted to wait to see what you did first before we took any action. Can't do that now. So now we have to meet, and I hope you'd like to come to the meeting. It'll be Friday night at Upper Gwinnett Township at 7:30. We'd welcome you there to discuss with us why we have to pass this resolution to give you notice of intent to adopt a tax that you may not even adopt. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
As I understand it, the townships can do the same as we do, in that you can pass the resolution of your intent to pass the tax, but then not go through with it.
Mr. President, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
You don't play games
That's,
with the tax.
I just
But-
wanted to check with it.
but the point
That's
be-
essentially what we were going to do tonight, had we had the entire board and all the information.
Well,
So-
I count a quorum here. And quite frankly, I would like your input on that, because believe me, it's important to us. It's important to all of our residents.
I don't think we have all the information. Given that you didn't get that.
And it would also add that I believe that you understood that timetable as well as we.
Don, is there a meeting with municipal relations on this? You brought that up in March.
26 of May.
Oh, it's going to be following our vote. I thought you said you wanted.
I'm Gene Ziemba. I'm also of Upper Gwinnett Township. I'm also the Commissioner of Upper Gwinnett Township. And I want to go on a record this evening to state that I resent the fact that we were not more timely noticed, and also I am opposed to the earned income tax. I don't think it's progressive. I think it's regressive. I'll give you an example. On Tuesday, I was over at the Upper Gwinnett Fire Department over in West Point. I got a phone call from an individual who asked whether or not there was an earned income tax because they were contemplating an opening up a business in North Wales. in West Point. And that was the criteria by which they were judging whether or not they would open up the business. I think an earned income tax in a North Penn area is not going to be helpful. It's not going to inspire people to move in here to open up businesses, bring industry in. I think it's another hand in our residents' pockets, to be perfectly honest with you. Look at North Wales over here. There's an abundance of office space over there. Unheard of, $6 a square foot. They can't rent it. And one of the reasons is you have an earned income tax over there. And this is something that this board should give consideration to. What will be the ultimate effect when an earned income tax goes in with business in this area, in the North Penn area? Look at other communities that have an earned income tax. Compare it with the assessment that Upper Gwinnett has, with some of those other communities, and you'll find a number of them, even though they have an earned income tax, their real estate tax with the same amount of assessment is greater than Upper Gwinnett. And I, like Bob, really resent the fact that you're putting the municipalities on the spot for us to make a resolution which may not be carried out, which will give the impression to the residents that it's our municipality that wants this earned income tax, when that's completely erroneous. There's no way, do we want it, do I want it,
and no way would we accept it unless you adopt it. And at 45 days, this should have been decided a month ago. So you would have given us leeway time for us to make our decision and for us to pass a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience?
I'm Bill Roman, and I'm also from Upper Gwinnett. I really want to address the budget issues at this point because I cannot make Thursday's meeting. I will be teaching that night. While the U.S. Senate was recently debating the goals for the year 2000 education bill, Senator Pat Moynihan, who was chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, stated that the policymakers and the educationalists in this country are preoccupied with educational inputs. The U.S. post-war, that is after World War II, educational policy has been focused where the public education lobby has wanted it, on financial inputs such as per pupil spending, teacher salaries, and pupil-teacher ratios. As U.S. industry has become more productive, public education has moved in the opposite direction. Over the past 20 years, public school enrollments have fallen 7%, while the number of teachers has risen 17%, and non-teaching staff is up 40%. Class size, which is a litmus test issue for the NEA, indicates that the average class size fell from 27 students in 1955 to 17 in 1990. That average ranks the U.S. near, if not at the top, in terms of teacher workload reduction, but put a different way, at the bottom in terms of teacher productivity. Countries such as Japan, Spain, France, Korea have much larger classes, with Korea having as many as 55 average in a class, students per teacher. Herbert Wahlberg and William Fowler in 1987 published a study of New Jersey schools, and it was published and has been reported in national newspapers. They indicated at that time that class size is among the weakest factors affecting education until the class size gets down to the 5 to 10 level, which is tantamount to tutoring. Indeed, this fact is recognized at our major universities in this country because they have many classes of 100 or more, and some as high as 500, and even Cal Berkeley I saw on television where they had 750 in a class. Now, back in 1979, the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia conducted a 3-year study which focused on the 4th grade in the Philadelphia school system, and that was focused on because it's an important grade in developing reading skills. And what they did, they studied the students in 25 schools, and they gathered 162 facts per student, plus 245 variables per student in the analysis that they did. What they found out was that the pupils did better in the largest classes, up to 35, and slowly, as they got from 30 on down, they started to do worse until they hit 10. In which case they said that was tantamount to tutoring, and they started to do better again. Now, what about North Penn? In 1986-1987 school year, the school district had 9,240 students, and the intervening 7 years it saw its enrollment grow by 2,360, or 25.5%, to its present level of 11,600. Educational costs per student rose from $4,266 to $7,420, an increase of $3,154 or 74%. Inflation was responsible for 32% of that increase, and the remaining 42% really represents inflation, expenditures above inflation and enrollment growth. Now, over the 7 years, that added up to $100 million worth of extra money over and above inflation. That's a lot of money coming out of the community's pockets. What did they get for it? In In 1986, North Penn's SAT scores averaged 947, with 67% of the students taking the test. In 1993, 7 years and $100 million extra dollars later, the SAT scores averaged 943, with 75% of the students taking the test. It's obvious that spending money does not produce better education, and that fact has been demonstrated by dozens of studies. There's no real correlation between spending and performance. And as James Coleman, in his landmark 1966 study, said, it's all family. I hope that this board recognizes these facts and rather than mug the taxpayers you represent, would do the moral and professional thing and cut expenses prudently but significantly. Raise average class sizes. Right now, they're, according to your budget, there'd be about 14.9, and raise them to 17. That's the national average. This would save 102 teachers. Now, I realize there may be legal restrictions, but at least don't add any teachers. And if any teachers retire or leave, don't provide permanent replacements until you can absorb them and make this up. Cut a number of guidance counselors and psychologists. In my own high school, we had, in a graduating class of 256, one counselor. And mind you, this is 1948. 248 of us went off to college. But one guidance counselor handled us. Now, I cut some teachers' aides, maybe an administration position or two to at least appear to be even-handed about it. Now, in addition, I would cut the salary offer to 0 for 93, 94 for the teachers. And I would reduce it for the future because I just checked at the Fed and the inflation rate for 1993 was 2.7%. Not 3.2, but 2.7%. This budget needs an overhaul. It has, and excuse my liberal expression here, but I think it's redefined rape in financial terms. I'd like to see it sent back to the district administrators with significant revisions being requested. Let them make the changes. They're closer to it. You can't micromanage at this level effectively. It is difficult. And I don't think this budget would be acceptable in the private sector. It would demand some significant restructuring. Now, finally, I'd like to quote William J. Maloney, who's superintendent of the Eastern Pennsylvania School District, who stated in a Philadelphia Inquirer op-ed article not long ago, and I quote, "With public school finance already at the cliff's edge, the prospect of more children and fewer dollars propels the system either toward major surgery or major disaster. Hopefully, we will have the courage and the imagination to opt for major surgery before being overtaken by major disaster." Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Good evening, whatever it still is. My name is Ellen Janke. I live in Lansdale. The gentleman that just spoke, I just have one comment. The SAT scores, the number to look at was not the 900 points. The number to look at is the percentage of children that are now taking them. That is a lot more important than what the score is in the end, that you're encouraging more and more children to sit in those classrooms on a Saturday and take those tests. And also, I'm a 1973 graduate, and I blame my lack of guidance in life on the lack of guidance in school. I feel I could have done a lot more, been a lot more, if someone had taken the time and said, boy, you could really go ahead with this. I just had to say that since I stayed up so late. The other thing I have to ask Mr. Redcamp is, if we go with 1%, how many mills would our real estate taxes go up at this juncture? If you stick with the budget.
If you're saying, if we get done with our budget,
Right.
the kind of numbers that we're talking now,
The kind of
not
numbers,
major
just
cuts,
preliminary, right,
there would be no increase in millage.
okay.
But there'd be no decrease either.
There would be no decrease either.
So
There would be
it's
no
all
increase,
taxes.
there would be no decrease.
So the tax,
It would be,
so the
would-
tax would be on the people that are earning income, not on the people that.
that's correct.
Okay.
For 1 year.
For 1
For
year.
1 year only, and the following year, most likely go back to the,
You'd get 0.5%.
no,
It would go down.
back to real estate taxes.
Oh, right.
Next
I
year
know.
grabs this pocket, and then the
Right.
following year, there's no place to go but back to the property tax.
Oh, I
again.
agree with that, but see, when you're in a household where everyone's already been paying it for the past umpteen years, it kind of hurts to know that our money's going to West Conshohocken.
True.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Any others? Yes, sir.
I'm Walter Kuzma from Tolmanson Township. First of all, I'd like to know how you got in this hole. Second of all, I saw in the paper from the Taxpayers Association a 5-year projection, 50% raise in taxes. Could that be possible?
Anything's possible, but I don't know where that number comes from. Ask the Taxpayers Association. where they got their
It came from their accountants. If they can do it, there's no reason that your administration can't give you a 5-year projection. I've talked to many people here lately, and the older people are scared for the simple reason they can't afford the real estate tax raise and they can't afford an income tax raise. They're living on a fixed income. No matter how much you raise, their income is right here and it never goes up. Now, how are they going to pay for all of your raises that you're going to? Sauderton took an income tax out. Now they're going to raise the real estate tax again. And that's what they're afraid you're going to do.
And that's most likely what would happen, given the way the process works. We can take 1/2 of 1% for us and 1/2 of 1% for the municipality. And if the municipality doesn't, as Mr. Kearns discussed today, then we also accept that, the rest of the 1%. Now, what happens is we lose that income if the other townships enact it. So we would essentially be getting 1/2 of 1% on earned income, not on retired income. So all your folks that are on fixed incomes, I would assume is retirement income, that is not taxed. So they would have the net benefit of paying the same amount of real estate tax as they did last year, which is effectively not increasing at all, whereas all the people that were paying, that are earning would pay income tax.
There's a lot of them can't even afford to pay what you have levied there at last year.
I'm sorry.
Whether you like it or not, you know it's true. And here's another
understand
thing.
that.
Every school board member up here has been elected by the people. You hire the administration, don't you? You know what's happening? The tail is wagging a dog. I think they should have had this budget in here at least 60 days ago, so you can go ahead and go over it. You mean to tell me you can go over it in a week or two and tell everybody here what's in it? I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Todd Fisher, Lansdale. I just wanted to state that I don't think that the board could accept this budget in good conscience, knowing that we're $8 million in the hole. Probably even more, because we've built in here probably conservative estimates for for teachers' increases. Not that I think they deserve any. I agree with the previous speaker who thinks that we should offer them 0 increase. I'd go along with that, as I've stated before. But assuming they get more than the 3.2 that they're asking for, each additional percent is roughly equivalent to what, $800,000?
400,000.
400?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyway, still, those are the numbers that I think we should have been talking about. I've been here for 4 nights. We've looked at the expense side, and we haven't come up with anything meaningful at all. We've talked about access fee or activity fees, which could amount to maybe $30,000 per year. We've talked about other little things. Nothing, in my opinion, that adds up to a whole lot. Basically, what I think we're doing here is we're basically skirting the issue. Well, now we can go to the taxpayers and say that, oh, well, we talked about it. We tried to cut the spending. But if you really want to cut the spending, let's see something significant here. If we're $8 million in the hole, don't come running to me to ask for $8 million without cutting this budget here someplace meaningfully. I would strongly oppose an earned income tax, and I hope that you will take a closer look at this budget. Maybe there's things that we can knock out here. We got to knock a couple $1 million out of this $8 million deficit. It seems like everybody who's got money to spend wants to buy the Cadillacs. Well, I'm the one who's going to be footing the bill. All right, let's look at some alternatives that we can maybe do something meaningful with this discussion. Thank you.
Any other? Glenn?
Glenn Hyman, Falmouth Township again. I know the Taxpayers Association put something out, and I actually have not seen that, but I think they projected something like a 50% increase. I actually went on record, and I'm sure many of you probably saw in the North Bend Reporter, that those projections might actually be conservative. So I would strongly urge that the school board and the administrators do put together some projections so the taxpayers do know what they're in for. You've heard me say this before. I know I'm repeating myself, but I think it's grossly unfair for the constituents of this community to not know what they're in for. And I don't think it's all that much to ask for. I don't know a corporation in the world that does not put together projections more than a few years out. And I think it would be certainly fair to the community to put together some sort of, I'm going to say, 5-year plan. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate. I mean, it's difficult to project what the growth in the community is going to be. But I think it's certainly something that you can go ahead, based upon PEL or whatever you want to use, and be fair to the community to give them some basis of what their taxes might increase over a given period of time. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Bob Graziano from Tomenson. Everybody's stolen my thunder tonight. I wasn't going to say anything, but I want to also express my frustration in this whole process. I'd like to blame the administration, but I can't. I think there's lots of blame to go around. I think, in a sense, the administration has some blame because they come forward with the budget with maybe not too many guidelines to go by. I think the citizens have somewhat to blame. I'm glad to see more than 3 people here tonight. It's about time. And I think also the school board needs to take some blame in that I'm not so sure you've given the administration guidelines. I think you ought to just trash this budget and go back and have them rewrite it, but with some guidelines. Those guidelines could be last year's plus inflation rate. I agree with Bill. I think maybe we're not going to make any friends here, but I think 0% for 1 year is a good idea. This whole economy, even this region, has gone through tremendous upheavals in the last few years. Myself, I've been through a corporate restructuring, a failed company, a period on layoff. I'm making the same money now that I was making 6, 7 years ago, and I'm no less a professional than the teachers. And people go through this. The teachers haven't. They've had some pretty good raises. And Bill brought up some statistics that nothing has improved that much. I think there's lots of blame to go around. And I think this budget just needs to be reworked quite a bit. But I think this board needs to set some guidelines back to administration to make sure that it's done with some discipline. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members who want to speak tonight? Any other board comments before we close? Okay, thanks very much. We're adjourned.
I'm waiting to hear it.
I was going to kill him right then and there.